trained 2 million farmers on doing farming without chemicals, regenerative agriculture.
Based first on the real experience of the family farms conversion.
Training our farmers to produce their own on-farm organic fertilizer or purchase it or collect it from the local areas.
Everything from compost to adaptive multi-paddock grazing or holistic plant grazing, biochar.
Around the world have effect from climate change, and we can use local seed for food, seed for life. If we can grow year by year, local seeds can adapt for climate change. It means make them more stronger.
To have a seed with stronger genetic material that can recognize the environment and grow up again stronger and healthier.
We all learned the importance of seed saving, especially the indigenous seeds, and were encouraged to continue practicing regenerative agriculture to provide the nutritious food to the community.
Navdanya, which means 9 seeds, has created more than 150 community seed banks. We've saved more than 5,000 varieties of rice. We've saved every bean that India grew, all the millets which we used to call 30 years ago forgotten foods. Our native seeds are resource prudent. They don't just use less resources, they give back more to the earth. And in the native seeds lies the power of regeneration.
Organic farming have a potential solution for climate change mitigation.
We believe that our systems can help meet ESG requirements, taking carbon dioxide out of the air and then feeding that mostly through root exudations into the soil microbiome.
We're seeing soil that was complete beach sand or desert sand turn into a living chocolate brown colored soil.
You don't have to feed the soil anymore, like a miracle here in the desert.
It's possible to rehabilitate large-scale degraded landscapes, including landscapes that have been degraded over long historical time and over vast areas. It is the paradigm shift.
And the communities are growing more food, earning more money, having happier, healthier lives.
We are the people who started really a global revolution in farming to regenerate all of agriculture, because at the moment, industrial agriculture is an existential threat to our planet. It is responsible for most of the clearing of ecosystems. The chemicals used in industrial agriculture pervade our whole planet now, and many of them are disrupting hormones and stopping reproduction. We also know that these small amounts of chemicals in our food are the main cause of the global epidemic of non-contagious chronic diseases like cancer, like heart disease, like diabetes. We have the science. So we have to regenerate agriculture. We have to change it. And this is what we have started. And it is a revolution. It was a few of us. We were leaders of the organic industry, agroecology, holistic management, natural health. And we came together in 2014 and we formed Regeneration International. And in 2023, we had 533 partners in 74 countries. I checked today, we're over 550 in 75 countries now. We're growing that rapidly. So let's talk about the basis of how we regenerate agriculture. And we need to go back to the most important process of life on the planet. photosynthesis and what is happening in plants. What we see is we get solar energy from the sun, and in the leaves we combine carbon dioxide, that's the main greenhouse gas, with water, and it produces glucose. And glucose is the basic molecule of life. 98% of what you see in plants are made of glucose. That wood is made of glucose. But glucose is also our energy source, our proteins, our hormones. It's the basic molecule. And when plants grow, about 30% of these organic compounds the plants bring down to their roots and they feed the soil microbiome. This is the area of the greatest biodiversity on our planet. And this microbiome is the one that does the work to get the minerals that are locked up in the soils and make them available to plants rather than buying expensive fertilizers. You can see here, these are the exudates from the roots. These are these compounds made from glucose, and they feed this very important ecosystem that builds soil health and builds fertility. And this is how we do it. This is our farm, my wife and I, our organic tropical fruit farm. And over our monsoon season, we grow these cover crops. These are, you have all the same plants here in Vietnam, tropical grasses and tropical legumes. And I put my tractor in there so you can see it is more than 3 meters high. That's an enormous amount of fertility. And what you see there is that 30% of those products, that photosynthesis over the wet season, goes into the soil to feed the soil microbiome, to build soil fertility. And this is our place in the dry season when we have either grazed down or cut down the cover crop. And what we did in 11 years, we increased our soil organic matter, which is the organic carbon, from less than 1% to 6%. And we increased all our minerals. You have a look, calcium, 500 to 3,696 parts per million. Magnesium from 101 to 391. Phosphorus from 123 to 1,500. We didn't buy them. The biology did that because we fed the biology with the products of photosynthesis. It saves us thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's better for the environment. This is another example of it. This is what we call pasture cropping. Instead of ploughing up all the plants as weeds or spraying them out, we can cut them back in the right way, and usually through grazing, but we can mow it, and then we can plant in it. In this case, it's oats. But Peter Randall here does it with rice very successfully. And I wish you had a chance to explain to everybody how to use this system for organic rice. What is really important here is this. This farmer does not have to buy thousands of dollars of fertilizers and thousands of dollars of pesticides. The cost is so much less. It's not spending a lot of time and money ploughing up, so the cost of production is a fraction of the normal cost of production, but his yield is exactly the same as his neighbours. So he gets the same yield, less cost, but really importantly, after he takes the crop off, see the green there? That's pasture. He puts his sheep back on, so he gets 2 incomes, not 1, at less cost. And this is work here done by one of our really good soil scientists, Dr. Christine Jones. And you can see the difference here between, this is the farm I showed you. This is the farm next door. These people are brothers. They inherited their farm from their father and put a fence through the middle. And this is the normal industrial agriculture. You can see a little bit of carbon there, soil organic matter, but have a look at this. It's deep and rich in carbon. That's all the glucose compounds that have come into the soil to build fertility. And you look at the increases. Calcium, 177, magnesium, 38, phosphorus, 49, nitrogen, 40%, and so on. He didn't buy any of these. The biology, this management system, made them available. So he saved thousands of dollars. He has increased his fertility, he's lowered his costs, and he's doubled his yields. This is what makes a profitable farmer and improves the environment. All that carbon you see there, that dark carbon, that is soil organic matter. And by doing that, we increase our ability to capture and hold water. And this is very important now, because in farming, because of the changing climate, we have longer droughts, they are more severe, and when the rain comes at the wrong time, and it's usually very heavy and destructive. By increasing our soil organic matter, our soil carbon, we can increase our water content. Now, in Vietnam, and our country, Australia, and most of Africa, our levels are usually less than 1%. If you just got 1%, you can capture 160,000 litres in the first 30 centimetres of the soil per hectare. Any more rain just runs away, usually runs away with the soil into the creek. But if you get up to 6%, I showed you in our farm, we went from less than 1%, we went from the 0.5% to 6% in 11 years. And we know people have done it even better than we have. So I'm trying to say this is doable. It is not academic. This is evidence-based. But here, that's 960,000 litres for 6%, just under 1 million litres. We call it a megalitre. You can track a megalitre of water per hectare. Where? In the root zone. You don't need to build big megalitre dams and irrigation channels or anything. We can capture that rain, even though it's come at the wrong time of year, and we can store it so that when we go into drought, we have drought-proofed. And this is really important. This is actually 1992, but now they have 40 years of this experiment. And what they've shown in drought years, the organic system, because we've got the soil organic matter, we have the higher yields than the industrial system because they don't have the soil organic matter. And 40 years of research shows consistently that in drought years, organic gets more than 30% higher yields. This is really important. I want to get rid of this notion that organic is lower yielding. With the right organic systems, we're equal, and very importantly, in climate extremes, higher yields. In fact, when you look at an experiment over 20, 30, 40 years, organic is higher because in the bad seasons, we get the higher yield, and we're getting more and more bad seasons. This is really important for us to have resilient systems as we go into climate change, because it's only going to get worse. So let's look at some of the other systems. Here we look at grazing, and grazing at the moment is one of the major forms of land degradation in the way it is done. But with our regenerative forms, we can regenerate these ecosystems so we can go from these bare soils and start bringing back biodiversity. And I want to show you this bottom one. This is 2002 in Zimbabwe. This is Alan Savory took this over, and 200 cattle were degrading it. He changed the way he managed. He didn't get rid of the cattle. He didn't destock. He changed the way he managed. And you can see the difference in 2006, in 3 years, the difference he's done. And this jeweler and I, we were here exactly a year ago in Zimbabwe, and this is what it looks like last year. You can see what he's regenerated the ecosystem, all the tall grasses. You've got this beautiful mosaic of vegetation, incredible biodiversity. He's now has 400 cattle, but wants to get 200 more to manage the grass, so he's going to get 3 times the production. Plus, he's got all the native animals in there. We saw impalas and other types of deers and baboons, and he has a herd of elephants living there as well. So you can, what I'm trying to say here, we can regenerate our farming systems. We can increase our yield, increase biodiversity. It isn't either or. We can do both. The other one I want to show here is how we can use these plants for, use photosynthesis, use plants for pest control instead of using pesticides. Because most insects have host plants. And if you have a look here, these are what we call the parasitic wasps. And they are also pollinators, just like bees. They need nectar and honey to become sexually mature. Without it, they can't lay eggs. Okay. So what happens here, by putting in these sort of plants, we can bring in these insects, and what they do is they lay their eggs on the pest, and that way their larvae control the pests. We can get pest control without using synthetic or any pesticides, actually. And what we can now do is change our farming systems and introduce these host plants. This is our farm, a rambutan farm in the tropics. And a lot of these plants like Singapore daisy and pinto peanut you have here. But what we're doing now is we're using the sunlight that our cash crop isn't using. It's falling on the ground now for ecosystem services. This sunlight now is powering all these plants that are giving us pest control. They're also putting all that glucose into the soil. They're giving us nitrogen. They're shading the soil and keeping it cool. This is an example of how we apply it. This is what we call push-pull, and it can be used in rice, corn. This is corn here. And instead of getting rid of all plants as weeds, we start bringing in the right ones. So this is Desmodium. It's a tropical one that you have here in Vietnam. And what it does, it repels the pests. And on the side, we plant what's called a trap crop. This is a grass called Napier grass. And the pest will go there, lay its eggs there. When they hatch, the plant has a defense. A lot of these plants are itchy. That's silica hairs. It cuts up the caterpillars, kills them, breaks the cycle. Similarly, these plants put out compounds that cause the suicidal germination of weed seeds. And this is a whole area of science now where you can add these plants to control bad weeds. And this is an example here. This is corn using the Desmodium. So instead of having bare ground, have Desmodium. This is a traditional system here where they started with bare ground. The weeds come up. This weed is parasitic, and then you've got the corn borers. So they had very low yields. We do this, the yields increase by 10 times. The system here now is applied in chilies, mangoes. We can do it in any system, rice, fruit trees, vegetables, and get high yields at very low costs. And lastly, I want to end on I've just got 2 more slides. So we had new composting systems. And these are very easy. You don't have to turn them. They can be done at any style. I want to show you this. It's just a little bit of weld mesh shade cloth. Can be done on any size farm. You know, so any smallholder farm can do this very easily at low cost. You've got a big farm, you just make it bigger. It's simple. But this compost, because it's very high in biodiversity, increases the yield. So that's the standard one with using, you know, synthetic nitrogen, urea, with cotton. This is what happens when you put the compost on. No fertilizer, just this compost, and you get 3 times the yield. These are the sorts of simple technologies we can use now to make farming cheaper. It costs nothing. It costs nothing to make this. And more efficient. And lastly, I want to end on these slides. This is SRI, where we can dramatically increase the yields. It's unfortunate that political pressure has stopped this research in Vietnam, but this is a slide from Vietnam shown here in Hanoi, showing after a typhoon that the SRI is far more resilient than the normal industrial rice or normal paddy rice. And we need to get this research started again, because we can get an average of 7 tonnes, 10 tonnes without too much trouble organically with this system. And my last slide is this one. Because in Vietnam and most of the world, the majority of farms are less than 2 hectares. This farm is actually less than 1 hectare. And they're doing what we call no-till, no-kill. They're not ploughing up, they're not digging up, they're planting in compost and mulch, and they get very high yields. They employ 8 people because of the amount that they produce, and they make $200,000 per acre. $400,000. And the reason I want to show this is because this is something that can be done in Vietnam, done very well. This farm originally had 40 acres, but they realized that 2 acres done very, very intensively this way earns more money. And to me, these are the future of agriculture, and it shows that we have a very good future by adopting these appropriate technologies. So thank you. Come on. I want to welcome everybody to the People's Food Summit 2024. And today I'm having a discussion with one of the true pioneers of the organic sector in Australia, but also internationally. I'd like to introduce you to Tim Marshall. And Tim, if you want to, I'd just like you to start with how you became involved in the organic sector.
Well, back in the days of our youth, Andre, the internet didn't exist. So most people got their information in those days from local organisations. And I found my local organisation, which was the Soil Association of South Australia, had been originally an offshoot of the British Soil Association, and then as it gathered membership, the locals decided to start their own organisation. I attended their first public event at an agricultural high school in the Adelaide Hills, and joined. And very quickly became the secretary of the Soil Association. So that's what got me absolutely immersed in organic.
Your story is actually a very similar one for a lot of people our age. For me, I live about 3,000 kilometres away from you in Northern Australia, but we had a similar organisation. We called it the Healthy Soil Association, and it was a handful of farmers, all farmers, and it started originally in the 1930s, about the same time as the UK Soil Association. And it's actually very important for me because I actually got my experience working on one of these farms in 1973, and that's how I learned organic growing. I think what people would really like to know, and you are actually actively involved in this, is that the original societies were all called soil associations of one type or another. But out of that, the modern organic movement was born. Would you like to talk about how that happened in South Australia?
Yeah, well, first I'll say that prior to me, just about all the active people were farmers. And as people like you and I came along, I think the previous motivation for a lot of people would have been a religious sort of conviction. But after Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, the character of that movement changed a little bit, and it tended to be younger people. But we were wedded to the old, what I call a Lady Eve Balfour view of organic, which is that the soil is absolutely fundamental. And that to me remains very important. It remains important to the IFOAM world. Most of my colleagues around the world, that the soil is absolutely fundamental. And interestingly, a lot of the views that we had back in those days were considered by the conventional agronomists to be completely nuts, and they didn't think that organic operators would survive. But of course, a lot of new science, the science of the soil microbiome and the human microbiome, actually fundamentally based on those soil principles. So the next thing that I did after joining the Soil Association was run the first scientific conference on organic farming in the Southern Hemisphere with my Soil Association colleagues. And a very important event happened at that conference. A colleague, Sandy Fritz, came along and ran a workshop on why we should have a national organisation, because as you suggested, at that stage there were small, local, state-based or regional-based organic organisations. Then there wasn't anything national. And so after that workshop, at that workshop, we set up what we call the steering committee, and worked our butts off for about 2.5, 3 years. And eventually we, through contacting all our friends in the organisations around the country, we started an organisation called NASA. And NASA came to be the first national organic organisation, and eventually the first organic certification body and first standards owner in the Southern Hemisphere. So that was a pretty significant event. And I continue to be involved in NASA to this day.
Yeah. Well, you actually became the first chair of NASA, which I think is very important. So you had a leading role. And what you were doing also, the same thing was happening in Europe at the time, in the US, in South Africa, India. Around the world was now the formation of these national organizations. And, in IFOAM, we now say this is the change from what we call Organic 1.0, which is the original handful of
farmer pioneers through to Organic 2.0, which is the beginning of codifying organic into standards and certification or ensuring the veracity of products labeled as organic. And once again, you are one of the leaders in this, not just in Australia, but also with IFOAM globally.
I think a big difference between now and then is that now you can regard organic as just another option in the supermarket. So it's just as you can buy halal and you can buy gluten-free and you can buy organic. But in those days, it was so out of the mainstream that you had to have a certain level of commitment because, the farmers, if they went to the tennis club, they didn't necessarily want to say I'm an organic farmer because they could be criticised. So to be committed, 45 years ago, you had to have, a sort of value-based and moral connection to what you were doing. So that is what allowed that movement then to grow so very quickly and very rapidly, was the commitment of myself, yourself, and our many colleagues.
Yeah, look, actually, that's a really important point. And so, from my point of view, as a farmer, we were ridiculed. We were regarded as nutcases. Talking about things like healthy soil. Even as 15 years ago, I wrote a peer-reviewed paper, and one of the peer reviewers wanted to get rid of the idea of soil health. I said, it's not a scientific term. And that sort of attitude. But the other one is, me being, one of the few organic farmers in our district, we were the subject of ridicule from all the other farmers, to the point that my kids got teased and got a hard time in school. And I remember when I do media interviews, I did a lot of media, and they want to take photographs of the family. My children did not want to be in the photographs because they thought they'd be ridiculed. It's a different story now, but then we faced every level of ridicule. And then in your case, when you're now starting to take these systems to government, there was that other level of being ignored, not taken seriously. Do you want to talk about that? Because one of the things that you were also instrumental in is getting the first regulatory system in Australia.
At that time, it was an era of where there was a slightly different approach to government. There was an interest in involving industry in that era. So the Department of Agriculture didn't want to know about us because nobody in that organisation had been trained or understood organic, and they were deeply sceptical. But the trade organisations were interested. They realised that there was the potential for a developing market, and so government was interested in facilitating trade, especially between Australia and Europe. They had a fairly hands-off approach at that time. It was like, yep, you can go and do this. Please do it yourself. Government doesn't want to get involved with that. And so we did that largely by ourselves. We worked out how we were going to run these certification systems. And at that stage, the Soil Association and NASA were in touch with the early certifiers, so the British Soil Association, Naturland, CCOF, and those organisations. We exchanged a lot of information and worked out how we were going to put this thing together. It was slightly different approach to quality management was coming into vogue in that era, but that all consisted of sort of end product assessments, like, at the end of the production line, you'd make sure that the 9mm bolt and the 9mm nut would fit together. With organic, because you can't necessarily take an organic orange and measure its organicness. It's very hard to do that. We had a process focus, and that was entirely new. It took government a little while to work out how they were going to do that. Interestingly, in Australia, one of our main colleagues was actually the meat industry, because they were working out that ear tags and traceability of animals was the best way to keep a handle on their product quality and origin. So they became one of the models that we could use to point to government and say, look, they're doing it too. This is a legitimate way of constructing the verification process.
It's very interesting because you did work with the early certifiers and the Soil Association, which, to let everybody know, was also one of the early certifiers in the UK.
Yes, yeah.
CCOF, which is in those days it's California based, but it's actually one of the also the world's largest certifiers. So what was happening here was consistent with the major organic movement at the time.
It was very important to connect with those organisations because we were doing something that was totally new, and this sense of having, colleagues around the world and working out something that we knew would become a worldwide system was really critical. So in the case of NASA, we collected the early documentation of all of those organisations, only about 5 or 6 that were really doing a terrific job. The Soil Association was probably the absolute model, and NASA became the first Southern Hemisphere organisation. And interestingly, one of the things that caused NASA to really go ahead was that we launched at about exactly the time that Australian beef exports to the US were banned for a short time because the American authorities found DDT residues. So that gave us a media platform that we could not have bought with any amount of money. And so, a few of us who showed some promise at being able to talk to media did a lot of work. And I'm sure you did some of that at that time, where a few voices around Australia managed to, get into all the rural media, all the foodie media, and some of the general media, just to, there was a whole lot of other chemical issues at that time. There was an issue around ALAR in apples. There were issues of chemical trespass with aerial application. And so there was a bit of a focus, and that the importance of Rachel Carson's whistleblower book, of course, can't be ignored as well.
Yeah, look, that book, Silent Spring, was such an important book. And what a lot of people don't realise is that where she got most of her information from was actually the UK Soil Association. And they helped her write it, put it out, and that started the organic consumer movement. Before that, it was largely, a few very small amount of farmers like myself. But when that came out, we now had consumers and a market, and the whole organic sector grew incredibly quickly. And after that, we actually, because there was the interest, and this is a big issue, we could get the publicity then. And I'm one of the people who's been very actively involved in pesticides. That was a good time for us. Yes. Now, because of the censorship of the media, it's virtually impossible to get up any of those issues now. We were very lucky we actually had that window.
Interesting, in Australia now, we no longer have a full-time pesticide campaigner anywhere in the country, which is very, very sad.
You were involved in many, many organisations in the growth of the industry. And while you were doing that, Australia was actually one of the leading countries, and particularly NASA. You're up there with
the great organizations that actually, how can you say, formulated organic as we know it, help that whole codification, help the promotion of it. NASA was a leader, not just in Australia, but globally.
I think the quality of many of my colleagues had a lot to do with that. We had to work out how to do this, and we had a group of inspectors at that time. It involved, the great Rod May, who we all deeply miss. Liz Clay, who became an IFOAM board member, and others. And I think because of that commitment, we did a lot of homework. So if we'd never been to a flour mill before, we've never gone to a brewery or winery or whatever it was, or a dairy before, we invested quite a bit of time and found out about that. And that, look, it led to some very interesting stories. I remember the first milk certification that we did in Australia for delivery of milk. We spent a good 3 or 4 months probably talking to the laboratory people in that organisation who were petrified that they were going to bring in this contaminated organic milk into their factory. And eventually we sent 2 of their lab people down to Fish Creek to this fantastic, absolutely inspirational dairy. And they came back and they said, we've never seen a cleaner dairy in our history of working in this industry. And that operator used only one single cleaning product, which was cider vinegar. And it was a deep shock to them to realise that that there was another way of doing this that really was completely outside their ken, and none of their studies had introduced them to how that might be done.
Another example of that is the export of organic grains, wheat. They were all previously sprayed with organophosphates, particularly malathion, so all toxic. And the organic sector pioneered using carbon dioxide as a modified atmosphere to kill all the pests and to export them through to Europe.
Another interesting story, some of the first biodynamic apples that we sent to Europe turned out to have a pesticide residue, and that was rather shocking for everybody. And we realised that what had happened is in the positioning of the containerized system that contained the organic apples, they were at the end of the air distribution system. So the air had gone through the containers holding the non-organic apples, and had the air circulation system brought the chemicals with it. So after that discovery, the organic apples always had to go very first in the aeration system in the hold of the ship.
And in my case, because for people to know, I'm an organic tropical fruit grower, someone who produces tons, pallet loads, and we had to make sure that they were in completely sealed plastic bags for that, because we can't fill up a whole container load of organic fruit. So I've got to go in with the non-organic bananas or mangoes, and they're all sprayed. And unless the consignments were fully sealed, all my organic produce would end up with all the pesticide residues, particularly in those days, the fungicides.
Of course, there was a legislation at that time that if you transported grapes interstate or overseas, you had to treat them with sulfur. Yeah. And so in building these relationships with government, we had to get them to change some of those requirements. And so after a bit of investigation, the government ended up saying, if this meets the allowances conditions for the destination country that we're exporting to, then we'll drop that requirement. And there were a number of other requirements such as that, because in those days, for instance, a lot of our produce was sold through boards. as a wheat grower, as a citrus grower, as a potato grower, you were actually not permitted to sell your own produce. You had to sell it through a board, and those boards, being deeply conservative organisations, didn't acknowledge that there was a separate market for organic. Didn't think that they should have to pay a premium for a different category of product like organic, and so that became quite a struggle as well.
A big struggle, but there's also one other one that's for exports. And we'll touch on this now. You're involved in the first regulation for organic, and that was an export regulation.
Yes.
And we're supposed to get a domestic regulation not long afterwards, but we still haven't. And both you and I put a lot of effort into this. But I just want to say, from my point of view as a farmer up where I am, because we have to transport fruit thousands of kilometres, that all the tropical fruits was those days sprayed with dimethoate and xanthine, things that are actually banned now. We'll get for fruit fly up here, and we managed to get an allowance for certified organic that I could get it in on inspections.
Yes.
But I still had to put it in consignments of these highly toxic organophosphates.
Yes.
And wrap it up. But I suppose the issue here, what I want to talk about, is because we had no organic regulation, I couldn't, domestic regulation, I couldn't get things done where I could transport things without all these chemicals contaminating my organic produce, unless I spent extra on packaging it. And I think, where I just want to talk about now is that, I'm talking 30 years ago, 40 years ago, almost. And now, basically 40 years down the track, or 30 years, I'm still in the same boat.
Yes.
And, this is a big issue that we need to fix up. And I know you've been very active now on the next phase and what you believe is the appropriate solution to an organic domestic regulation. Would you like to just expand on that?
Yes. Well, firstly, you're right that I've traced the history of that domestic regulation, and every time there was an announcement when our Minister of Agriculture, John Kerrin, said he was going to establish this committee to give us a regulation, he said, I'm only responsible for export, but I'm going to talk to my colleagues and we'll make sure this is a domestic regulation. And 3 years later, the Minister of Agriculture, Simon Crean, launched that standard. And he said, I know I'm not responsible for domestic regulation, but I'll talk to my colleagues and we'll make this domestic. And here we are 35 years later, and we still don't have a regulation. So I do believe that we are looking in the wrong place when we look to the Department of Agriculture to give us that regulation, and that it's really food law in particular that we need to look at, which is in the Australian condition, because we're a federation, is largely to do with the states. So we're looking in a sort of a different direction. We still have a couple of issues to solve. For instance, that food legislation, we may need some special legislation because we now need to cover cosmetics. We need to cover fibers, etc., those sorts of things. But so the secondary issue in Australia becomes which standard. We have an export standard which is law, but it has no currency inside the country. We have an Australian standard, which is the AS 6000, which can have some relevance to the courts, and is probably one of the better managed standard systems across the world, because our chief organisation, Standards Australia, is acknowledged to be one of the leading standard setters. But we need now to merge those two standards and to end up with a single standard and with the best possible governance and management system for that standard, which currently is the one that can be provided by Standards Australia. So that's a big part of our current struggle, is to decide, okay, now's the time when we absolutely need a domestic standard. We need it to protect Australian consumers. We need it so that we can negotiate equivalency arrangements with our major markets across the world, because at the moment we're doing conformity assessment arrangements with individual countries, which is really expensive. It means that if we can get one single standard, we can go to an equivalency arrangement, and that should affect the cost of certification for our certified operators significantly, because we can rely on our government to negotiate a market entry to other countries, rather than individually negotiating with 7 or 8 or 9 different governments.
Yeah, and as you know, but probably most people don't know, is that both you and I, we were actively involved in getting this Standards Australian standard up, on the advice of government that this is the best way forward, because it can be enforced by the courts, and we can do it actually in this case under consumer law. So it was from my point of view, it's a very elegant, simple solution. However, the main thing in this case that's held it back has not been government this time. It's been us, the organic sector, and the lack of unity and disagreements. And I would say more than anything else, this is what stopped us from getting a domestic standard. But rather than spend time on that bit of history, I think you've been actively involved now in bringing the industry together with a new industry group and having a united way forward, which to me is incredibly positive and long overdue. So would you just like to just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We'll have a new forum called the Organic Development Group, and it really is an informal coming together between the various organisations to agree that it's urgent now that we have a domestic regulation, and to work out how to talk to each other, because after while NASA was the first national organisation, it didn't assume that it was going to take on the functions of a peak body, and 30, 40 years later, we still don't have agreement about a peak body. So we inhibited a bit in how we talk to government as an industry, which is why the Organic Development Group has this function of being able to sort of try and put a united voice. Still with disagreements about which standard we should use, which standard process we should use, and with fundamental disagreement about the role of the certifiers and their importance in that arrangement. I think that the modern view, the organic 3.0 view, if you would like, is that the certifiers are one voice within that process, and it's because historically they were the organisations that could operate nationally with the funding that they got from certification to be able to operate at that level. There's now the view that that era has passed, and we need to involve consumer organisations. We need to involve environmental organisations in and possibly in Australia we need to talk to our Indigenous communities and involve them in this process, because we want to say now that organic is a significant way of protecting the environment and protecting our healthy future.
Look, I strongly agree with you there. Part of the reason why when I was president, we put out the concept of Organic 3.0, or IFOAM put it out, is to not just being seen as bogged down in certification and standards, but as organic as a lighthouse. We offer so much in terms of the environment, climate change, fairness, the whole issue of animal cruelty. We start looking at a suite of issues that we are leaders of, and this is where we wanted to see ourselves as a good global citizen.
So certification remains really important, but it is a part of our industry. It shouldn't be the focus of our industry. It should be a tool and not an endpoint. And so some of the struggle that we have at the moment in Australia is sort of repositioning of those organisations to understand that there's a lot of management of those organisations that could be critical for us. For instance, I'm a strong advocate that standard setting and certification and inspection are three different jobs, and they really don't belong within the same organisation. So, it may be that a certifier wants to employ its own inspectors, but in my view, that should be an independent operation. And the inspectors can have their own professional organisation, their own code of ethics, their own insurance arrangements, their own confidentiality agreements, that sort of thing. And that begins to take away some of the power of these certifiers. So it's not an easy transition, but I think it is a necessary transition. And I think that even some of the certifiers now begin to acknowledge that, okay, this is an inevitability of maturation of the industry over time.
And I think that's a good way of putting it. The maturation. When we first started, we like you say, we invented it. It didn't exist.
I was absolutely figuring out how we're going to do this.
Yeah.
It really was, and we were fortunate because we in the context of DDT being found in our exports and ALAR and chemical trespass, in that context, we did attract attention of some really good science people, and they helped us to understand how we were going to put this system together, how we were going to measure background chemical levels and MRLs and those sorts of things. But essentially, it was cobbled together by industry with the sort of go-ahead from government to do this, with a minimal expectation that government would actually become involved. And I think that one of the problems, again, that we have in Australia is that because we didn't have an agreed peak body, we've sort of slid towards more and more and more government engagement without there being a forum where we can sit down together with government and say, right, how are we going to do this? Who owns the standard? Who manages the standard? Who pays? And all the things that go with that, which should be negotiated.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I just wanted to say when you're saying about standard setting, certification and inspection should be three different lots of organisations, because putting them together is a huge conflict of interest, because now these organisations not only make the law, they are judge, jury and executioner of that law. And nowhere does that work. That leads to all these problems down the track. So it's in the interest of the organic sector that they are split into separate organisations.
Yes. This has been a huge realisation for some of my Australian colleagues to be a bit shocked to say, that as a standard setter and a certifier and an inspector, you have a fundamental conflict of interest. And I think that's an argument which is very winnable, because it is, but it's been a big transition, and something that they need to come to grips with, and it is working.
Yeah. The other one, which I think where Australia is just starting, there's been attempts at doing it, is PGS. You know, when I was president of IFOAM, we actually put a lot of effort into expanding it. We actually got United Nations behind us, and PGS is huge. It's just fact, more people, organic operators, are certified through PGS than any other system at the moment. And you know, outside
because of our because of our remoteness in Australia, there's a few things that are happening around the world that we haven't entirely come to grips with yet. And PGS is fundamentally one of those. But the other one, I think, too, is the concept of organic varieties or organic breeds. And, you know, Australia hasn't engaged enough with those ideas, which I know are very current in Europe, and they have some currency in Asia. And the other problem that we have in Australia too is because, again, we have a very different environment. We could talk for hours about how different it is, really, and how our original settlers, white settlers in Australia, misunderstood and misinterpreted our environment. But because of that, we deal with these tropes about, for instance, the poverty of soils in Australia and how phosphorus deficient they are and those sorts of things, which leads our academy to not believe that organic can work in Australia. And if you try and talk to them about organic systems, and you have the excellent examples that come out of, you know, Rothamsted or Feeble or those sorts of, or Rodale Institute, they immediately want to say, "Oh, but Tim, you don't understand. Our soils are so poor; they're so positive, so negative in terms of their phosphorus and other nutrients." So that's something that we urgently need to do. We need to get some really good research in Australia that can show what good managers organic can be. Those original people that we dealt with in our youth from those institutions did not believe that organic survived, and it's a shock to them to know that we have organic operators coming to their 33rd and 34th and 35th inspection, annual inspection, and so we need a bit of research into that, and also into environmental protection, how organic can protect our soils, our water, our air, and again, you know, I guess that Rachel Carson raised the awareness of chemicals in food. We have a new era of awareness now, where we're realizing not just chemicals in food, but the entire chemicalization of the environments of the world, of the ocean, of the air, and of the soil, and PFAS and other things which are coming to our attention now. And the sheer volume of chemicals that we put out into the environment, and we need to stress that to our consumers. We need to bring back the idea, which you know, of the 70s and that time, of an organic lifestyle, because, you know, it can be that now organic is just that easy choice at the supermarket of you know, an organic apple or a non-organic apple, but there's a whole lot of lifestyle choices that we need to advocate for to protect our future generations.
Yeah, look, the example of the environment, chemicals in the environment, is critical. I live, you know, a couple of kilometres away from here, is the Great Barrier Reef, the world's largest living organism, over 2,000 miles long. And it's in big trouble. And I know that people like to blame climate change. Climate change does cause bleaching, but bleaching is actually the way that coral adapts to climate change. It expels one lot of cyanobacteria. These are a symbiote organism that fixes glucose to feed the coral polyp. It expels it so it can be recolonized by one that's better adapted. So we're always hearing the reef's dying, it's climate change, but most of the reef recovers, but we've got all the areas of particularly cane farming, and that's where we see the dieback. It's not climate change, it's the herbicides and also the runoff, the silt that silts over and eutrophies the reef. And where I believe that one of our strong points is that we can stop that with organic. None of those chemicals, none of that soil runs off. We keep it on farm. And to me, I think it's a really important area that we need to focus on.
Yes, we need some good side-by-side studies where we look at your organic banana growing neighbours and their conventional neighbours, and where we actually have a look at the water runoff into the reef. That's something that we're going to have a bit of effort to do, because the research system in Australia relies so much on industry funds. And of course, when you propose research like that to a body that's responsible for managing banana industry across Australia, they know very well what the outcome will be. They know that very well, and that's their disincentive. So we need a bit of lobbying to government so that we can show the public benefit to be able to get some funding to do some of that work. Or either that, or we need donors, but we don't have in Australia the history of philanthropy that they have, for instance, in the United States.
No, we don't have the history of philanthropy. It's the other way around. Yes. But I think the other one, which I think is really critical, is we actually in Australia, we've got a massive crisis. I call it a farming diaspora. We're losing farmers to debt. They're going out of business. And like you said, you've got organic farmers, 33rd, 35th, inspection. I've been farming organically. Well, I first started in 72, but I realized I had a lot to learn, so I apprenticed myself to an organic farmer. But I'm still farming now. We're picking today, picking pallet loads of fruit. But in my district here, the sugar mill just closed down because it's not viable. Years ago, I worked with the Mackay growers, and we were getting higher yields of organic sugar per hectare than the conventional. And at that stage in Australia, our processors were importing organic sugar from Brazil 7 times the world price. I took that to our mill districts and said, look, even if it's 2 times the world price, I'll get you a higher yield and double the price. And they were interested, but then they just said, no, it can't be done, that sort of attitude. And to the point now where farmers, because they've got so much debt, they're selling their farms off to pay the banks because they no longer make sugarcane, and because we don't have a mill. And this is the other problem I see when we're trying to grow it up. We have, farmers would rather go bankrupt than make a good living being organic. And this is another area where we need to get change, get information out.
I think the viticulture industry is a terrific example for that in Australia, because originally they were of the view that we just can't, we'll never survive disease in our industry without chemicals. And now I have like one of my local world-class primo wine producing areas, the McLaren Vale, is now 50% certified organic and biodynamic. And the story of how they came to that realization is really interesting. They had the advantage that that perhaps organic, that viticulturists understand the concept of terroir. They understand the importance of that what you put in the soil will have an outcome. They understood perhaps that that they had an image problem with whether their product could be healthy or not, and that going to organic maybe facilitated that in some ways. For a lot of the smaller growers, they rely on cellar door sales, so inviting the community into their property and being able to say, yes, you can bring the kids, they can run around, it's safe here, and some good science also around that, and some really genuine biological products now that are you're dealing with chemicals. This is an enormous transition that we always knew that we could influence chemical disease in orchards or in vines with small physical changes, like how you aligned the rows to the prevailing wind and getting sunlight into the vines and those sorts of things. We didn't really understand in the early days that we could actually go completely away from chemicals in favor of biological products, which we now have particular strains of fungi and bacteria and other things that we can actually purchase in a bottle and apply. And the early application of integrated pest management sort of didn't achieve what it could, because they were trying to integrate a pesticide management system, whereas when you went to an organic property, you could see that they were integrating the entire system. So they were integrating things like their selection of where they were going to plant. The McLaren Vale is a maritime environment with an escarpment behind that produces katabatic winds. They were integrating the entire management of the soil and the biodiversity of their growing environment. So the integration became, rather than a small integration of the chemical system, it became the integration of the entire ecosystem. And that McLaren Vale, for instance, is a good example of 40 years ago. There was a lot of chemical trespass across that area. And so that, the issue of moving towards a less chemical dependent sort of agriculture was really vital for them to preserve that industry in an area where they share it with residential use.
Yeah, I think the viticulture industry is one of the best, not just in Australia but worldwide. For instance, in Europe, the biodynamic farmers, vineyards, were winning huge amounts of awards.
Yes,
excessive amount. And yet at that point, they were 0.4% of the vineyards. But that made all the other vignerons take notice, saying, how come these guys who are virtually nothing are winning? And as you said, it's that awareness of terroir, of soil and place. And so you started to see all these farmers going from ridiculing biodynamics to actually picking it up, becoming organic, and as you say, then you move to a more holistic management system. So for me, the wine industry is probably one of our best examples. But the other one we're starting to see now, also as a really good example, are the grass-fed organic systems, pasture-based systems.
The regenerative concept is really helping to open the minds of farmers to what's possible with simple management systems. And I think that I now encounter quite a few people who 20 years ago would have said, I just can't see a pathway to being organic. I'd love to be organic, but I can't see a pathway. And now we might have a few disputes about, with the regenerative movement about, the nature of the claims that are made, which don't at the moment match the verification systems that organic certification has. But that industry is at a stage now where organic was 40 years ago, and they'll need to come to grips with how they manage their verification systems. But it does allow farmers to have a really rapid, quick response to that they can see in a matter of a year or two of management, to how they manage their pastures, and that opens the opportunity for people to be able to see, yep, maybe this is my way where I could become organic.
Yeah, look, for me, it's myself, Ronnie Cummings, Vandana Shiva, and a few others. When we started Regeneration International, we started the international regenerative movement. Before we did it, hardly anyone heard of the word. It was rarely used. Now, we put it there. And the reason why is because industrial agriculture is an existential threat, on every level. But for farmers at the moment, most farmers in industrial agriculture are struggling under a mountain of debt. And there's very few who don't believe anything should change. And to use the term regenerating agriculture, it's a neutral term. And, the example I'll give here, that the farmers would rather go bankrupt than go organic. But if we start them on the pathway, which is what we wanted to do, that paradigm shift in changing, suddenly organic is not so far away. It's achievable. It's reachable. And this is what we aim to do. And I get a bit disappointed at times when people in the organic industry are probably the biggest critics of regeneration. They see it as a threat rather than realizing it's actually the organic sector's biggest opportunity to work with these people and show them now they've got an easy pathway to be certified.
Yes. You know that my company that I help to run, TM Organics, helped to convert a lot of people to organic. And I saw some problems there with that term of conversion, because it had this sort of road to Damascus sort of impact, and the idea that you had to go cold turkey. And so in helping over 600 organic farmers to change their management system, I preferred to use the word transition.
Yeah.
Because it allowed people to believe that they could step by step change their system. And for instance, working with cereal farmers who just, that look at, 20,000 acres of farm, which you can easily have in Australia, and not being able to understand how you could do that. And we were able to say to them, you've got a 3-year conversion period that you're going to require. Just take one paddock, right? Take one paddock through its transition, and then you'll develop some confidence with that system. You'll see it working. So now, each year you can add another paddock into your transition program, and eventually you can, transition the farm over time. But that was a little bit unique, because prior to that, the organic movement had promoted this idea of a one-stage conversion, drop the chemicals and go organic.
Yeah, and what you did, I thought was really important. I remember very much the way you did it, and I was always very, very impressed that that's the way forward, because most farmers are actually very frightened of change. Farmers, we tend to be very conservative.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because if we take risks, we have crop failure, the bank owns us. And so the way you do it is the way I always work with farmers. Just take a small part of your farm, not your best bit. You don't want to make it too easy. Not your worst bit. You don't want to set yourself up for failure. Get a reasonable bit and start that, because whenever you do something new, you make mistakes, but you work on the concept of continuous improvement. How do I do it better next time? And get it right.
It's scary enough now.
Scale it up.
But it's scary enough now. But 40 years ago, it was really, really, really scary, because you had simply almost nowhere you could go. You know, if you didn't belong to those local organic organisations, and sometimes if you lived in an Australian bush, you were a long way from you know your
isolated
colleagues. So you know, and even now, you know, if you live in the right place, you can go into your rural supply shop and you can say, I'm going to be organic. But if you live in the wrong place and you say, you know, what chemicals, organic chemicals can you sell me because I'm converting, it's likely someone will look at you and say, what are you doing that for? You know,
it's probably not even that polite a word. It's probably fuck off out of here.
Yeah. Well,
no,
we're going to a big audience here. I'm trying to be.
So I probably shouldn't let people know how the vernacular is used in rural Australia, but that from my experience is the polite way of telling you that you're not going to get it.
But look, even that's transitioning. I think I see young people, you know, agronomists who are aware of climate change. They're aware of chemicalization of the environment. They see, you know, that we must change, and possibly some of them are also saying, how do I manufacture my future in this industry? What can I do that can identify me with a growth path into the future? And so some of those people now are turning to what we used to call biological agriculture, which we now possibly call regenerative, and even to this awareness of organic. So you now get people who can say, yeah, we have those products, we can help you. And that in itself has been an enormous transition in the ease and ability of people to change their farming system in a more holistic way.
In Australia, we are losing so many farmers. The majority of farmers look like us. We don't have a younger generation coming on. A lot of farmers are walking off their farms or selling it because of debt, because the bank owns them. But we, you know, in this case, the organic sector, we are the great success story. While industrial agriculture is losing farmers, we are growing them.
Yeah, we still have a problem of capital, because, you know, how do young people move to land? And so we need some new models around how to bring people into agriculture. I think that PGS has a role there, and community supported agriculture definitely has a role in that. It is a way that people can make a move into agricultural production in a different way, where they can perhaps use someone else's land. In some cases, they can use that land while adding value to the land and not interfering with other operations that are ongoing on that land, and where they have some unique possibilities, such as you know, being able to talk to a bank and have a concept of future income, for instance, which is very rare in agriculture. In community supported agriculture, you can actually say, you know, here's my future income for the next 12 months. So that we need more models like that to move young people into agriculture.
You know, I see us as the lighthouse in agriculture.
Yes.
Thank you very much for everything you've done. It's been, you know, your role has been really significant in taking Australia to where we are now. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Andre, and thank you back to you, because you had an important role in that too. And in that 2000 decade, when you were the leader of the Organic Federation of Australia, I think that was absolutely critical in giving us that Australian standard, which I think is the future for how we will manage organic in Australia, and also your work at IFOAM. and with regenerative agriculture. So thank you also.
Okay, thanks, Tim. All the best.
And I look forward to seeing you again soon in some part of the world.
Right, and ditto, the same here. We'll catch up.
Good day.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome to the People's Food Summit 2024. This is the Asian component, and I have the privilege today of working with my two friends and sisters, Ms. Ercilia, who is our Latin America Director at Regeneration International, and Swati, who is from India. So it's 3 continents in one place, but this particular day, we have the privilege of hosting Miss Swati, all the way from Andhra Pradesh communities in India. Swati, briefly, she's a global citizen and her impact is global as well. So I'm just going to say briefly who she is, and she'll indulge us in everything else. Swati is currently an associate scientist with the World Agroforestry, C4 or ICRAF. And she's been working with the communities of Andhra Pradesh, where they are doing farmer-managed natural farming program, especially for the last 7 years. So Swati, you're welcome. I know that today you are engaging us in the transformative work that you've been doing, this very important work. So we're really looking forward to just engaging with you and having a chat. So take us on.
Thank you so much, Precious. Namaste, everyone. Namaste, Rislia. Namaste, Precious, and everybody else as well. Thank you so much for giving opportunity for the story and narrative of Andhra Pradesh to be presented to you all. Thank you so much. I'm here to speak about a very important aspect in food systems transformation, and that is the paradigm shifts that is required for transforming the food systems. The narrative today is basically shifting the current agricultural green revolution based food systems, which is predominant in the world today, to natural farming systems. The nomenclature can differ. So in India, the conversation around natural farming is accelerating. Global and elsewhere, there is agroecology, there is regenerative agriculture, there is sustainable agriculture. So more than the nomenclature, we would focus on the principles of soil regeneration, principles of bringing the wisdom of communities in the center. And that is much more important than the nomenclature war that is going on. This narrative will be surrounded around the Andhra Pradesh Community Managed Natural Farming Program, which is a government program in a state in India, and which is now getting scaled up across the state of Andhra Pradesh, which is a county for references across the world. And it's now the government of India is talking about it. And it's path-breaking, because the most populated country in the world is talking about transforming its food systems. We have 1.5 billion people to feed, and we are talking about transforming our food systems from green revolution to natural farming systems. Let us understand this first in the context of the planetary level problems that is facing us. So I am in Asia right now, Precious is in Africa, and Ercilia is in Latin America. While we are divided by continents, we are united by the problems. And the problem is basically the agri-food systems that is marring the farm crisis across the globe, and which is being accelerated by the climate change, which is being accelerated by how we produce food, how the degradation of the planetary health is happening. And this slide shows that the 6 to 7 planetary boundaries we have completely crossed those boundaries. This is a very catastrophic infographic that we are seeing here. And this is all my context building, why we are talking about food systems transformation. A planetary health check scientific assessment report is talking that the 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries have already been breached. And the problem is these boundaries, these 6 are caused by the food agri systems. It is caused by how we produce food, how the food is grown. And that is where my conversation on paradigm shift comes into picture. Let us understand why we are talking about paradigm shift. Because one project, one NGO, one civil society, one program, one scheme one philanthropy cannot solve these problems of planetary level catastrophe that we are facing. It cannot, it requires a paradigm shift. And what is a paradigm shift? We need to look at the problems, we need to look at the situation, and we need to understand the context in a completely different. We have to change the way we look at science, we need to change the way, and in the context of food systems transformation, the paradigm shift we need to look at is how we grow food. We need to look at it differently. We need to understand and change the way we look at food systems transformation. And this also, ladies and gentlemen, includes how we grow food, and the solutions also we need to look at it differently. And that's why I'm very sure many of us in our work, in our daily lives, in our interventions talk about paradigm shift. Let us see what exactly is this paradigm shift. The problem which I had built the context of, that we have to eat food to survive, and the food ironically is killing ourselves and the planet. That the method of growing food is destroying us. And this is where it leads to this conversation, Ursula and Precious also, is that we are talking about what do we choose in this paradigm shift. Do we choose the current conventional green revolution farming systems, or we have to choose between agroecology and natural farming? We choose the old science, the science of green revolution, that soil or food has to be grown in a particular way, or we talk about developing a new emerging science because we realize that the previous science actually destroyed the earth. We need to look at the whole mindset of how we grow our foods, the last 50, 60 years, or we talk about behavioral change to new mindset. So this is the paradigm shift that we are looking at. So by end of this presentation, I want you to understand that how do we look at the problems of our food in an extremely different context, or in a way that which is a counterintuitive, is extremely crucial. So I discussed the context. Yes, the planetary boundary is being breached, but the best thing is that there are solutions that exist. The one of the breakthrough, and this is the story that Andhra Pradesh, India is talking about, is that we want to transform our food systems, the way we grow food, into a natural. We want to mimic nature. We want to transform our food systems which is close and in harmony with nature. And this is what natural farming is all about. It is basically mimicking nature. It is a holistic land management practice which looks into accelerating the speed of photosynthesis. In short, what we want to do is we want to mimic the forest. We want to, because forest systems are so automatic, they are so in synergy with each other. Nobody is going there and putting any inputs. Nobody is dumping fertilizers in forests. How are forests growing? These are all self-sustaining entities, and we want to learn from those forest systems and mimic it in cropping systems, in plantation systems, in grazing systems, that how we can mimic forests and understand it much better. And that is where the natural farming conversation in India has begun. And mind you, this the conversation is not anecdotal. It is not a mystic science. It's an emerging science. It is the new science that the world is seeing, and it is backed by prominent people across the globe talking about it. And this slide becomes very important is because when somebody hears natural farming, it should not look like a traditional farming systems. These are incorporating the wisdom of communities, but these are new science. The science of soil, the science of microbes, the science of rhizobiums, fungi, these have all evolved in the last 25 years, because we have not yet tried to understand the soil beneath. We know the world above, but the world below, the soil, we hardly know even 0.001% of it. And this is that the names are just few of many that are working towards ensuring that we look at soil in farming systems. Till now we looked at soil through chemistry, and we realize, oh no, soil is a living entity. It's biology, it's microbiology. So that is the reason that the work in Andhra Pradesh is backed by major scientists across the globe. Now, let us understand what exactly, and these are not something which this slide is not something only for people who understand the technicalities. Even laymen, people who eat food, consume food, who work in the food system should understand that what is happening is then how our food is produced is that the roots of the plant takes produce food, and it gives it to the soil, right? So what we are saying is, in this entire conversation of the soil food webs, the one major aspect missing was that the soil microbes make all nutrients bioavailable. This aspect of soil microbes have been missing in the green revolution conversation. I will go back to the previous slide now. So green revolution conversation, what it said was that because soil are worked only by few entities, say nitrogen, potassium, or some other nutrients. So rather than looking at the microbial function of the soil, it became more of the chemical function of the soil. And that's why, irrespective of the requirement of the soil analysis across the globe, especially in the global south, people have started dumping the fertilizers in irrequisite quantities. In a country like India, which 70% of the population is dependent on agriculture, the fertilizer is highly subsidized. For example, if and this is just for example, if a bag of fertilizer costs $100, 70% of it is subsidized. It's so basically we are saying that we are subsidizing to provide poison to the consumers, to the people who eat food. And this is where we are talking about converting the soil chemistry to soil biology. And this is where we are saying, let us understand the nutrient cycles in nature. That the microbes are the one who accelerate or decodes the soil and provides the nutrients. So rather than harping about the external input that needs to be put, we need to understand how do we basically stimulate the microbial functions in the soil. And this is happening, and this will actually ensure increase in soil porosity. It will increase in soil carbon sequestration. And I'm very sure we all know that we have to fix two major cycles of greenhouse gases to ensure global warming, and that is the carbon cycle along with the water cycle. And what is natural farming or agroecology trying to do is accelerate this soil microbial function. And it is something which is necessary for all of us working in the food systems to understand. This is extremely layman language. The farmers in India understand. A small illiterate farmer is in Andhra Pradesh is understanding, and it is simple, logical, and rational. And it's easy to understand that if we fix the soil, we will fix the entire carbon cycle, we will fix the water cycle, we'll be able to fix the problems of farm crisis along with the problems of food crisis and nutrition and every other ecosystem restoration, everything. And that is where soil structure and water conservation go hand in hand. Unfortunately, for example, in India, even at the government level, the department or the Ministry of Soil does not talk to the Ministry of Water. And we are looking at the problems in our own echo chambers, in our own lenses, rather than looking at it in an integrated manner, because it is all interconnected. So another question you will ask, okay, Swati, we understood that we need to increase the microbial function of the soil. How to do it? How to achieve it? And that's why this is the answer to that the universal principles of natural farming is talking about how do you increase the microbial function of the soil. We are saying that let the soil be covered with crops 365 days a year. Usually in the global south, in Southeast Asia, I'm sure that's the same precious and Erisea may tell in Mexico or in Zimbabwe, that farmers are dependent on rain. So there are two windows of cropping systems. That is how we understand farming. What we are saying is that through natural farming, through agroecology, through accelerating the microbial function of the soil, we want to keep it covered to 365 days. That means that the soil should never be able to see the sun. It should be always covered. Then we are talking about diverse cropping systems, 15 to 20 crops. Right now, our green revolution paradigm has taught us that only crops needs to be monocropping systems, which has completely destroyed. I think it doesn't even require science to say that nature does not exist in homogeneity. It is an heterogeneous, self-sustaining entity. And that is the reason we are talking about diverse crop systems. Then the third principles we are saying is, let us keep soil covered with crop residues. Let us keep, so whatever, you will be fascinated to know, in northern India, there is a practice that after harvesting, the leftovers are burnt. And the irony is that the same crop can be dumped into the soil, wherever, and this can help as a mulch to the soil. So these kind of, intuitive and community induced wisdom that needs to be inculcated is not there. So we are talking about keeping soil covered with soil residues, crop residues. And then fourth is, we are talking about minimal disturbance of soils. That means minimal tillage. All these heavy mechanized industries of using tractors to tilling the soil, actually, and I'm sure many of you, all of us, it is time and again proven, the soil conservation and sustainable agriculture talks about it, that tillage needs to be eventually minimized. Then farmer needs to use, and this is a big question on seed sovereignty, that farmer own seeds needs to be used. So if a farmer has started doing natural farming, they preserve their soil, and then season after season, one crop after another, the genetic DNA of the seed also changes, and we definitely prefer indigenous seeds. That is extremely crucial. Then we are talking about integrating animals into farming systems. Unfortunately, because of the green revolution, animals have been shunned away and have been kept away from agriculture and farming systems. So through natural farming, we are saying, let us integrate animals into farming. Then we are saying biostimulants as catalysts to trigger soil biology. What does this biostimulants means? Basically, whatever is locally available inputs needs to be put in the soil. And I'm very sure we all agree to the fact that we need to eat local, we need to use local inputs. And the science is very simple. It is because your gut microbe is connected to your soil microbe. And this is a synergy between what the food that we eat versus the food that is produced. And that is, it's very unfortunate, because of the globalization in the world, that avocado which is produced in, say, Southern America and is available in a supermarket in India, and we eat avocados which the bacteria and the nutrition in the avocado is not in sync with the Indian gut, for example. So you have all these new age diseases, and especially India has the highest non-communicable diseases. We are a country, we are a diabetic country, and this is because our food systems have been completely corrupted because of the food that we are eating. In fact, Precious and Ercilia, that Hippocrates once said that let food be your medicine. But what we are, unfortunately, because of the way we are growing food, the way we are eating food, it's basically we are having medicines as food, and that is very, very unfortunate. And then we are saying the eighth principle is that pest management, should be better pest management practices. We use agronomical and botanical pesticides. And the ninth and the most sacred of the principle is that we want to reduce the dependency on synthetic fertilizers, pesticide, herbicides, and weedicides. No to them. And these are the principles of natural farming. Now, these principles are universal in nature. What does that mean? By that, it means that these principles are applicable in Andhra Pradesh in India, it is applicable in Zimbabwe in Africa, and it is applicable as well in Mexico, in North America, or Peru or Brazil in Southern America. So because of the universal principality of it, the natural farming systems, these are universal in nature, and I'm sure the principles of regenerative agriculture or agroecology, all of them talk about these universal principles. Now, the principles can be universal. What differs is the practices. What the problem today, and this is where we keep on confusing ourselves, that we are focusing more on the practices rather than the principles. So the practices will be localized, it will be customized, but the principles are universal in nature. So we need to be extremely cautious. What triggers microbial function in the USA, Midwest USA, or in Latin America? We need to focus on the practices that are in sync with the principles. And that's why we are talking about crop diversity and polycropping systems. Then I am taking you through just a montage of how the biostimulants or practices which are customized and localized in India, in Andhra Pradesh, as that this is a process of seed inoculation. We call it microbial seed coating. You are making the seed robust before planting, and this helps in ensuring that the robustity of the seed is extremely rigorous. This is another soil microbial enhancer, which is Ghana Jivamrutam. This is a solid inoculant. So if you see, you require all these inputs, precious, are procured locally. So you get cow dung, jaggery, pulse floor, cow urine, and handful of uncontaminated soil. And mind you, this recipe of sorts are recipe for ensuring that the microbial function in the soil gets triggered. It is beautiful science. All of this has their own reasoning. This is not something mystical. These are all why you require cow dung, because cow dung act as an inoculant. Why jaggery is required, because it attracts ants and other important bugs, so microbes. So all of this has a reason why they are involved into it. So this is all completely scientific in its approach. Then this is a liquid biostimulant. So this is so powerful that we have beyond Andhra Pradesh, in other states in India also, these inoculants are working like a charm, because this makes the soil much more robust and resilient, because we need to make our cropping system resilient to the vagaries of climate change. So drought, flood, all of it is being taken care of. Pest managements are done by botanical biostimulants and mechanical devices. It is very it's a trust building process. At the end of the day, farmers, it's very assuring for farmer to bring a chemical pesticide and spray to. So this is a hand holding exercise, Precious and Irsilia, that we are saying that let farmers build their trust. And that is the reason the country of India is saying that it will take us 2035 until we reach the state of Andhra Pradesh, and 2047 until we reach all farmers in the country of India. And then this is a unique breakthrough, brilliant innovation, where, and I'm very sure these are prominent across the world also, of seed pelletization. We are saying that seed pelletization process is ensuring that farmers do just pelletize the seeds on the field, and as little amount of rain is also received, we can see that farmers are getting another crop without waiting for the monsoons to arrive in India. And this is an extremely amazing innovation that has happened. Now the impact of it, the big question is it impactful? We had a cyclone Michong in December 2023, and it is evident, you can see it on the screen, that the conventional farming system was completely waterlogged versus the natural farming plot. And this is just side by side, adjacent to each other, and look at the difference. It could withstand heavy rainfall, it could withstand heavy winds, and this is itself proof. Farmers don't require any scientist to tell. It is visible proof in front of their eyes. That is much more conviction. It is helping in greening the desert. It's helping in drought proofing the earth, because you are not dependent on rains. You are using the acquired atmospheric water along with groundwater to grow food. What is the impact? First is, let me be very clear that there is no yield penalty. The state government of Andhra Pradesh is talking about it. And as I mentioned earlier, the most populated country on earth, India, is talking about transforming its food systems. That means that we are assured that the yield penalty or the decrease in yield does not exist. These are all mythical conversations. In fact, there are independent studies which have shown that the yield actually increases from year one. First. Second is the cost of cultivation comes drastically down. Even in situations where, for example, difficult crops like maize or brinjal, even if the yield was decreased by 10%, because of the decreased cost of cultivation, the farmer actually ended up having more net incomes. Then you have reduced water requirement. You have positive health and nutrition impacts, because farmers are eating, and the communities and consumers are eating diverse food. It's not just because of the monocropping systems Our food plate also was becoming completely unidimensional. But because of multi-cropping systems, farm families and rural communities and urban communities are able to have diverse food. And these are all iterative in nature, mind you, right? And then we have greater biodiversity. Bees have started coming on the farm, butterflies are back, earthworms are back, birds are back. So these are all slow rejuvenation of biodiversity. Now, this slide is extremely crucial, that good work has been happening across the globe. NGOs, civil societies are working towards it. But as I said earlier, that it's a planetary crisis that's happening. That means we need to talk about scale. We need to talk about millions of farmers doing agroecology or natural farming or regenerative agriculture. They need to shun away from chemicals to grow food. And if you can see, this slide is a great impetus towards the discussion that agroecology, regenerative agriculture, or natural farming, or any such alternative agriculture systems are scalable. They are not niche. There are large scale is possible. If you can see on the screen right now, there are 1 million farmers this year that have been enrolled in the natural farming program in Andhra Pradesh. And why has this happened? This is where, a major takeaway for people who are working in the transformation system is that we need to work in an integrated manner, right? So we need to work with government. There is a requirement for generating knowledge in various formats, integrating it with the community. The problem, that persists is that there is this knowledge, huge knowledge of alternative agriculture systems, but it is not being taken to the community. That gap is missing. I'm sure, Ursula and Precious, that you have been also, we have all been struggling that how, please tell us how to do it. This problem of, we know this is good, but how do we take it to the farmers? This big question of how. So we need to build grassroots and farmer champions, and especially women needs to be brought under this conversation. And Andhra Pradesh has a tremendous, amazing self-help group network that was brought on board to take this knowledge. And then we are talking about human capital. I am not a farmer. If I go to another farmer and convince, brother, let's transform to natural farming, he or she will not agree. It is only through the human capital. A farmer who has done natural farming talks to another farmer. Only then the conviction comes. And then the role of facilitating organizations, policymakers, think tanks, donors, philanthropies become extremely crucial to innovate and help in innovation. And then we need to develop the science further. Precious and Estila, am I audible? Can I continue?
Yes, continue, Swati. Quite audible and we're following very well.
Yes, thank you. So while this knowledge, as I earlier said, exists, but we have, so this knowledge exists and then community exists. So this bridge, this gap between the knowledge and the communities have been bridged by the program. And for us in India especially, farming is done by women. Let us understand this. And it's unfortunate that the image of farmer even now in India is that of a man, but majority of the farming is done by women. And that's why in India, majorly in Southeast Asia, and I'm sure in other parts of the world also, this feminization of agriculture and feminization of agriculture crisis is so predominant that the farm crisis is impacting the women as well. And it's to an extent that there have been residues, and this is unfortunate, and I have goosebumps while I'm saying this, that there have been residues of pesticides found in breast milk as well. So the perpetration of chemicals in our life is to that extent. So we need to change how the practices of agriculture is being done as well, because women gets impacted the most. But the best thing is that women, we have seen, understand natural farming much better. They understand agroecology much better than men. And I do not mean any disrespect to men of the world, but women are the one in Southeast Asia especially who cooks in the house, and they are the one who work on the field. So they see the linkages between the food that they grow versus the food that they are cooking and what they are providing to their families. So to enter a house, it is by women that we have tapped their energy, their potential to bring them in the mainstream conversation of agriculture, which the Green Revolution kept women on the margins, on the side. And if you can see on the screen, we are talking about huge numbers of women self-help groups in India as well as in Andhra Pradesh. Women are collectivized into groups. Self-help groups and federations are powerful entities, and which are the platforms through which the program is ensuring that our rate of transformation, the energy, time, resources that is utilized, helps in geometric progression, in multi-pride progression. Otherwise, if our strategy is through men, so we will be going, because men are not majorly collectivized, so you need to tap into one farmer, so it's an arithmetic progression. Women, because of their collectives, when you tap one collective, one women self-help group, that means you're able to reach 10 to 15 women at a time, which is phenomenal. It's that is the reason, the scale that we are able to achieve. So what is a lesson that you can take for your context is that while you are talking, having a conversation, or want to transform your local food systems, ensure that you involve women and youth into that conversation. And you also, in the collectives, the existing collectives, there might be some producer organization, there might be some self-help groups that might be working, that should be the entry. It helps in utilization of resources very optimally. And then another takeaway from this should be that the focus should be on developing local farmer champions. The knowledge which right now is held by some civil society or NGO, some implementing or external organization, to transform that knowledge to the community, so that even if the project stop, the knowledge doesn't leave the villages. So the focus, as we did in Andhra Pradesh, should be on farmer heroes. It should be on developing local champions. For example, tomorrow, if for any reason the government changes, the political will ceases to exist, there might be a lot of changes that the world can, the projects stop working. So that should not stop the work on the field, the transformation, the farmers transformation from chemical to natural farming. And that's why the emphasis on local champions should be prominent to anybody who is working in this space. Any outside thing, we are talking about no external microbes, right? We are also talking about no external resource person. Build local champions, they will drive the cause much better and with much rigor. So all of this is not just happening as a project or program. We are saying that we want to, because this is a new and emerging science, there is a separate academy that has been set up, which looks at the science for developing evidence, to look at the biophysical aspect, to look at the social science aspect, to look at it in an integrated manner, the soil, biodiversity, yield, cost, every facet of that. And this is why the Indo-German Global Academy for Agroecology Research and Learning has come into practice. And these are basically the focus of and this is very beautiful and fascinating. One of the flagship program of this academy is on farmer scientists. We are saying that we won't depend on the universities or the research institute who just discard this as a pseudoscience. We are saying whose science counts. Is it some scientists sitting in isolation, or is it the people or the farmers, a million farmers, as you saw earlier, working? So we have decided to democratize science. We want to take science to the people and work and develop farmer scientists. And if, as you can see on the screen, that we are in the pursuit, the state of Andhra Pradesh is in the pursuit of developing 10,000 farmer scientists. These farmer scientists will do a 3 to 4 years of, just like how you and me did graduation, so 3 to 4 years of graduation and work with practicals along with developing their theoretical concepts. And it's beautiful because the farmers who are identified are semi-literate or illiterate, but literacy is not an aspect. They know the science, or they know the concept of farming so well. So we are working in democratizing the science of natural farming. And as you can see, there is a lot of national and international organizations who have come on board. So nothing of this is anecdotal or mystical. These are all happening in the rigorous pursuit of scientific and rational oriented. But the only thing difference is we want to do science or research differently. It's the conventional scientific parameters should not be used to measure agroecology. So we are developing it in a certain way so that it is applicable to people who are doing natural farming or agroecology. So these are all ongoing research. Now I started, and these are last few critical slides that we want to look at. That, as I started by saying, we are looking at paradigm shifts. Look at it. We are saying that soil is a living entity. It is not just a mere substrate. It's not dirt. It is a living entity. We need to understand soil to understand the entire food systems functioning. What we have also understood, and this is very counterintuitive, a lot of points are that plants feed the soil. It's not soil which feeds the plant. We need to understand, and there is an exchange that happens between plant and the soil, and they exchange nutrients, they exchange microbes. Then the third paradigm shift, let us understand, and these are all developed by the work that has happened in Andhra Pradesh. That we are talking about crop diversity. It is extremely critical. The species, they help each other, they have a role to play. So crop diversity is extremely critical. That is the third major paradigm shift that we want to talk about. The fourth is nutrient acquisition by plant is very complex. These are microbial mediation is completely important, along with the rhizophagy and endophytes. So we need to understand that there is no external input requirement or synthetic or organic requirements. Then fifth and very crucial is that all plants fix nitrogen. So we first we were always harping about leguminous plant, but we have seen that all plants fix nitrogen. They have to. So this is another paradigm shift. Then weeds, we have misunderstood weeds in such an extent that farmers, there are many farmers who do every aspect of natural farming, but then they use weedicides. So we need to understand the importance of weeds, and we need to see that they have an important role of microbial densities and fungal aspects as well. Then we are saying as a new water paradigm, where we are saying that plants are not mere consumers of water, but they also produce water, which we call as green water. And this is what has been a major breakthrough, where the program is talking about harnessing water from the air, especially in the tropical countries. These are not intuitive, these are well proven on the grounds, and it's becoming scalable models. And then we are talking about pest management, that role. So it has been observed that if the soil is healthy, the pest attacks are minimal. So we need to work towards building robust soil and crop diversity, and that helps in the plant health pyramid. Now, in a nutshell, what we want to say is that, will food and nutrition security be compromised? Country like India with the 1.5 billion mouths to feed? The simple answer is no. We can, in fact, the current conventional agricultural system is not able to feed if we go the business as usual way. We need to talk about natural farming. We are talking about 365 days green cover. We can feed the world. We have adequate nutrients present across the globe to feed the world. Conventional farming system is putting us in grave danger. And this is what I want to end my narrative, is that that all of this, by the way, it's not going to be an overnight change, because this knowledge is complex. We are talking about changing the behaviors of the farmers. So let us be extremely aware of the fact that it's people's life that we are talking about. It's people's belief that we are talking about, that farming can be just done in one way, and we are trying to change it. So let us do it in iterative manner. We are not talking about overnight change. We are talking about an iterative and phased manner, that slowly building the knowledge, gaining the trust, understanding the concept is extremely crucial to bring this change. Thank you. This is the end slide to let us, and it's a call for all of us to act now. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Swati. This was just wonderful. So much information. You tried to make it all clear, like 30 minutes. So appreciate your ability to do that. You have basically sent us through a trip to understand from planetary boundaries to the commonalities between what's happening in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, and that's precisely what what you said. There's the struggle and what we are facing. It's all common in all three continents. I have so many questions. I'm sure Precious does as well. I'm sure the audience does as well. There's one in particular for me, coming from our experience here in Latin America, in Mexico. It's like one of the biggest challenges for this paradigm shift, which you were mentioning, has been the very strong agri-food lobby. So the agro-industry lobby,
Yes.
a green revolution, they
Yes.
changed their name, but they're still the same, or you call it Monsanto, DuPont, BASF, Dow Chemical. What changed in India? Was there any sort of like in this transition? What was the type of support that you found for this?
Yes. Yes, that's a wonderful insight, Ercilia, because we are very sure that the agri-food system, because there is money in agroecology, there is money here, and corporates will do anything to for money, right? So we are envisaging that there will be a corporate takeover, and that's why we are talking about urgent transformation and paradigm shift, so that we build strong grassroots movements. This and that is the reason when there is this major question that we keep getting asked on markets, because because we look at agriculture and as so extractive. It is so capitalist system of agriculture that we know, where we just want to put something to get something out. So that is the reason, Celia, while it does not put a smile on many people's face when they talk about markets, they talk about premium, is because we want to strengthen our local food system, because we know the moment any corporate, irrespective of whatever claim they do, that they want to bring farmers, give farmers a very good remuneration, we are working towards decorporatizing the market right now, because the moment markets come into picture, they will really take over the crop diversity. Because, for example, the PepsiCos, or for example, the we have PepsiCo coming and saying we want sustainable potatoes. So the moment you talk about just potato, you're just jeopardizing the entire conversation around multi-cropping systems. So we have to be very cautious that with respect to such. And this is, Celia, just to answer your question of how do you really prevent the takeover agrochemical lobbies. First is that. Second is, we are talking about building strong grassroots movements, because they will come and they will hold us by the horns. So we have to talk about strong grassroots movements, and that is the reason we need to mobilize communities much better and faster, to be honest, before the corporate takeovers take place. And third is, we want to bring develop women. I do not know, I'm sure in Mexico also, that women movements have to be very strong, because otherwise the moment the corporate takes over comes back, so we are just getting out of one evil of green revolution to another of agrochemical industries. Thankfully for India, and this duality will exist though, Celia, but in India, the political will right now is on transforming the agricultural food systems. So there were push of some corporates also in the natural farming conversation, but I think there is an enough resilience also, even in the conversation on GM, for example. The civil society and the advocacy is strong. So we are trying to overcome, but yeah, I'm very sure it will sooner or later going to come. We have to be ready for bloodbath, to say the least. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Swati. I think this has been insightful. And I think in the interest of time, we'll just start winding down. And I certainly think that we'll have lots of questions from our viewers. Once they do those, I think we can send them to you. But I also wanted to check in to say, what was that tipping point that stimulated a need to go towards natural farming? What was the shock? Because usually these things happen after a certain shock, but what was that?
So the shock was, you require leadership. So this is charismatic leadership. So I'm very sure a lot of us have heard about, see, every movement, the feminist movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, every movement required a leader. So in this conversation on natural farming, a leader in the form of the bureaucrat, by the way, Precious. It was not just a civil society, it's the government person who emerged as a champion, which worked in the favor of natural farming conversation in India. And but the problem is that is not enough. One man is not enough. We need to, and that is the struggle of developing such leaders in the governments And it's very difficult, Precious, it's very easy to convince a farmer. It's difficult to convince a bureaucrat or a policymaker. They require evidence. A farmer doesn't require evidence. Also, I know we are short of time, but I want to tell the audience that it's not just a work in Andhra Pradesh. The natural farming work is being seeded across India, and we are working with Indonesia, Zambia, Mexico, Kenya. In fact, we have started our work Precious in Zambia and Indonesia. And Ercilia, we had the government of Mexico visiting India just last week. So there is, we have this exchange of knowledge. It's not restricted only to India. It's being taken across the globe, and we are learning as well from Africa as well as from Latin America, from Mexico as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, you guys have really contributed to the agroecology and regenerative agriculture movement. And I think lots of African communities will be a part of this, including Mexican communities, because we also have projects and learning sites. So I think this is a start to a much longer journey, I think. Thanks. Essie, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I think this is extraordinary. This is precisely the type of conversations that we need to have, because there's so many commonalities, what we're facing, what we're seeing, our challenges. There's people on the ground everywhere doing the right thing, challenging paradigms. At the forefront of struggles, and there's so many examples of hope. And this is what the People's Food Summit is all about.
Yes, and it's possible in a lifetime. You don't require. Yes, it's possible.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're Swati, you're one of those like lights of hope. Like from what you do to how you say it, you're so passionate. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you so much for giving our farmers a chance. I think we are just mere articulating the exemplary work that they are doing. So all kudos to them. Thank you so much for giving us a platform, Precious.
Thank you, Precious.
This is amazing.
Thank you, Swati.
And it will certainly. Yeah, thank you, guys.
Let's stay strong and let's stay connected. Yes. Thank you.
Welcome to the People's Food Summit. And today I have the pleasure of introducing a good friend of mine, someone I've known for a very long time, Karen Mapusua, and she is the current president of IFOAM Organics International. As many of you would know, that I've also been a president of IFOAM, and for me, I regard it as the most important organisation for the organic movement. I'll start with asking Karen if she would like to explain to everybody who is IFOAM and what does IFOAM do. So Karen, welcome.
Thanks, Andre, and it's really good to be back for the People's Food Summit again. Great event, so thank you for continuing to keep this going on an annual basis. Yeah, IFOAM Organics International is, I've heard it described as the mothership for organic agriculture. So it really is a place for all the stakeholders in the organic and sustainable agriculture world to come together. Our membership is broad-based. It's from farmers' organizations all the way through the value chain, including consumers and those that are concerned about the future of the planet and understand that agriculture is a really huge lever for change. So I guess that's the other way I describe IFOAM. We're a lever for changing our food system and building a more organic and sustainable and regenerative future based on that.
So for a lot of people, I just want to explain that IFOAM was formed in 1972. Been around for a very long time, been through quite a few iterations. But Karen, you and your current world board have in many ways, how can you say, changed IFOAM's vision and mission, strategy. And from my point of view, when I first read it, I thought this is fantastic. This is really what needs to be done and will ensure that IFOAM still has this major role in leadership, not just in the organic movement, but I would argue in agriculture, environment, and also in social issues as well, So Karen, would you like to talk about this wonderful vision that you have?
Sure. So when the board came in, we were operating under sort of the vision of the big tent of sustainable agriculture and organic 3.0 as it was known. So the board realized that we really needed to find our role in that big tent of so many things that needed to shift. We also really acknowledged the legacy we have, over 50 years of leadership in the organic movement. And if we looked around us, we could see the impact. I mean, you can see the certification, the availability of organic products, the number of farmers that have converted to organic. But there's so much more to do. So we needed to really focus in on what we think and where we thought we could make the biggest impact as an organic movement. So that was a sort of move from we're in this big tent with everybody to thinking about what is our role in order to take, to take leadership and have everyone with us along on that journey. Recognizing the legacy that we have, founded in France in 1972, the largest organic markets are still in the Europe and US, but the bulk of the farmers are around the rest of the world. So we also thought it was time for the organization to really focus on being inclusive and bringing equity into the discussion and making sure that all the voices in the organic movement are heard. Sometimes there's a feeling that it's become very market driven, and the market is absolutely critical in this, but there's way more to it than that. It is about the environmental movement, and it is about climate, and it is about nutrition and the food system. It's about livelihoods for farmers. So the new strategies tried to find our place in all of that. We looked at, a three-legged stool, very stable stool, and the first one is around global leadership of the organic movement. We want to lead transformative change, and the way to do that is to make sure you've got all the voices in the room. So often there's a voice missing. So we really want to be able to take the lead on those key issues: climate, biodiversity, food security. They're all interlinked and all impacted by organics and by agricultural practices. So we want to work there, not in isolation, but with like-minded movements and groups and all those that are working for change. But that inclusive conversation piece is really important, and convening those amongst our own membership, but more broadly, is a really key role we see IFOAM having in global leadership in the organic movement and in sustainable agriculture in general. We also recognize that the certification is a little bit of a double-edged sword sometimes once it moved into government regulation. Really important for consumers to know what they're buying, and transparency is really critical. But we want to make sure that the organic standards are not the lowest common denominator for what is organic, but they are aspirational, that they're really based on the principles of organics around health and ecology and fairness and care, and they're embedded in the certification and standards rather than something that is, a nice ideal, but isn't reflected in the way that we are measuring, I guess, or verifying organic status. So that leadership is really important. But leadership also needs to come from the grassroots. So the second leg of our stool is around empowering organics worldwide, and developing a global organic academy is a really big part of that, making sure that we're, supporting our members and stakeholders more broadly to have the capabilities that they need and they want to work in their part of the organic sector. So it's quite a broad idea. We're also thinking it's important that that's not only delivered through IFOAM Organics International, but delivered through those who've got expertise in specific areas. So it will really be a whole community effort to build this academy for organics going forward. And as I mentioned at the start, the idea of equity and making sure that all parts of the world are equally engaged and have equal opportunities, equity of access, not only to things like the academy, but also to markets, to information, to the organic community that we're part of. And the last part is, I guess, something we all have to think about, is making sure that we're fit for purpose going forward. So the part of the strategy that we're really working on is looking at our governance after 50 years and making sure that the governance is reflective of the organic principles and reflective of those values of inclusion and equity. And then, using that governance and our model to be able to build the financial stability that all our organizations need in these very, very uncertain times that we face.
Yeah, well, as people will realize, it's actually a huge vision, a lot of work. But for me, it's actually a very good vision, and I believe one that is achievable. And I'm also pleased that you are tackling some of the difficult issues. One, so certification, and we use the word, I tend to use it, it's sort of like a double-edged sword. It's actually what grew us right in the beginning, and because it brought in the consumer market, and it's been very, very important. But as governments took it over and it became more and more complex and more what we call regulatory creep went into it, it's now seen by many farmers as a hindrance.
Yeah.
And so while it's there to serve the consumers, farmers actually feel like it's not serving them. So I'm just interested on your thoughts on how to deal with that going forward.
Yeah, look, that's very true. It's it's a burden on farmers, and it's only becoming an increasing burden. So I think we've got some other models out there, which can't work everywhere, often because of regulation. But I think there's always ways to make things happen as well. And the participatory guarantee systems, so they're farmer-led, grown from the ground up, based on local needs, local environment, local realities. It's a trust-based system that consumers can be involved in. So it's also bridging that gap between farmers and consumers. I think that is, really a great opportunity for organic farmers and for the sector in general to really take back the ownership of our processes and what we do and how we do it. So I think that's a critical way forward for us in the organic sector. The integrity of that, in many ways, I think, is stronger than a third-party system, and nobody holds anyone to account stronger than one farmer to another farmer, because it's we're holding up standards that we believe in. So I think that's really important. I don't think we should give up on the third-party certification. I mean, it's there, we have to live with it, but we do need to continue to work and lobby the governments to make sure that the standards aren't a race to the bottom, but the standards are actually doing what they're meant to do, supporting best practice and making sure that we do have really strong and robust systems. But the way that they're certified and the costs that are involved for farmers is so that is something we need to work on together with the regulators and with the certifiers to find better ways to do that, more effective and efficient and less burdensome ways to do that. If I had a magic wand, I'd flip the whole thing over and have everyone who use chemicals be certified, and those of us who don't not have to go through that. I might not achieve that in the next 6 months or so, but that would be the ideal, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be the ideal, but unfortunately we don't have this magic wand at the moment. But I think that the critical word you used is systems. And the third-party system is fit for purpose for the larger organizations who've got the economies of scale. And I really don't think we need to do much there. It's working and working very well for them. It's when we talk about the majority of farmers in the world, we've got about 500 million who have 2 hectares or less and actually live on about $400 US or less every year. They cannot afford third-party certification. It's worth, I can say that the cost of that is more than what they earn in a year. but they can afford PGS. So I just want to explain to the viewers a little bit more about PGS. It's what we call a peer review system. Farmers review other farmers. You know, there's a standard, there's a training, what we call an internal control system, where all the farmers have to meet a certain standard in terms of how the group operates. And from our experience and many others, as you were saying, Karen, these are some of the best. And I'll also say from my point of view, as a farmer, that I have been involved in PGS. And you're exactly right. Farmers do not let other farmers cheat, because we don't want people cheating on us as a group. And so we will make sure that they don't. The other thing I'd just like to say too, where it is different from third party, is that when you're third party certified and you've got something wrong, it's called a non-compliance and you've got to do a corrective action. What we used to do in our PGS, and it's quite common, we don't do that. We actually, you know, some of us, you know, like I used to be a master grower, would take time out of our packing shed, go to theirs, and help them do it. So look, you're not doing it right here, and take it as they're not cheating. They actually just need to learn more.
Yeah.
But then we'd have a 3 strikes and you're out, because you know, after you've done that the third time you're doing it, well then we know you're not doing
yeah, that's right. It's not lack of capacity.
Yeah, exactly. But all, you know, so I'm just putting across as someone who's personally been involved in this, and then actually as IFOAM president, put a lot of work in getting this up. I think this is the way forward. So I'm actually really pleased with where you're going with this.
Yeah, it's critical. And I think the other real value add around participatory guarantee systems, I think, is that farmer to farmer learning and exchange. I mean, I work with government agencies, you know, ministries of agriculture, and all of them struggle with extension services. They're never well resourced. They don't necessarily have the capability, but farmers sharing their learning and their experience through a PGS is, I think, probably one of the most important innovations in agricultural extension that we can utilize. You know, it's best practice, it's raising the standard, it's providing mentoring. I think it's a great opportunity for filling that gap that the traditional extension services can't fill. And, you know, in particular, they can't fill it in the organic space because mostly our ministries aren't equipped to be able to do that for organic farmers.
So that also brings me to your second leg of the stool, which is the IFOAM Academy, which is bringing in a whole range of training, mentorship, learning. Would you like to just expand on that and your vision and how you're going to set it up?
Yeah. So it's in its sort of fledgling stage at the moment as we formulate it and consult with people about what it could look like. There's always demand for training and capacity building. A lot of it is at the policy level. Our policymakers need to understand what best practice is and what the opportunities are, so they can help build an enabling environment for organics. So there'll be some work done around that. Most likely, the training to farmers and actual production is not something that IFOAM Organics International will deliver directly. There's many really capable organizations around the globe that can do that, you know, contextually where they're located. So there'll be partnerships there. And also through our, regional bodies and sector platforms that have legs on the ground in different parts of the world or particular expertise, like the Animal Husbandry Alliance, for example. We've got the expertise in there and may be able to deliver courses and training through that. This has all been based around the IFOAM Leadership Academy, which has been running for quite some time. And it's been a great way to sort of bring up that next generation of organic leaders. And we can see them coming through now and taking their roles on boards and in different parts of the organic sector. And that's really built capability across the gamut, the understanding of the organic principles and the way they operate, the policy environment, the practice of organic, as well as the other leadership skills that you need in a space to be able to advocate, to be able to speak confidently to people who are not necessarily on your side of the fence just yet. So I think the Academy will continue to build that leadership capability, as well as specific different technical capabilities that the movement needs.
I'm actually really pleased to hear that you're continuing with the leadership capability. That's one of the programs that we started when I was president, and as you're saying, it's been extraordinarily successful, and the way we're built capacity, and so many of these people now are in key positions.
Yeah.
And the other one, which I heard you said, is working with the, like I said, government bureaucracies, the regulators. And I think that is really important, because what I found when I was president and I'd talk with them, when they're trying to put in their regulatory systems, their certification systems, they were lost. They didn't know what to do. And I think having a course to train them, to help them do it, will help. And, the fact is, they've got the money. They can pay IFOAM for these services. It's actually something I wanted when I was president, but it never eventuated. I believe this would be really successful, and I think you'll find so many governments will use that service. So I'm really pleased that you're starting that.
Yeah, I think they will as well. And there's the opportunity to build communities of practice around these things as well. Yeah. So it sort of continues and perpetuates. And I think that's an important part of making sure that the Academy is grounded, so that it's continued on in different ways through things like communities of practice, or alumni networks like we have from the organic leadership courses to date. There's so many things that we could do with that. It's really an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, I think so too. And then the other one, which I think is very important that you mentioned, is working in key environmental issues, say the loss of biodiversity, the toxic chemicals like PFAS and pesticides that are polluting the environment, and of course the really big one, climate change. All of these are areas where organic can show leadership and also be a good global citizen.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're big, complex, and sometimes not very pleasant places to operate. But we need to be equipped to be there, and we need to have our data and our science right there with us, as well as the stories of our farmers and the stories of success and where we've shown impact in those areas. We have to be there, even when they're not great ways to spend your days, but it's just so critical. And I've been really happy to see, although agriculture has been on the agenda for the climate COP for, quite a long time now, just the last couple of years, it's shifted out of being just a dedicated work stream on agriculture, and food and agriculture is appearing in multiple work streams. So just, I think that recognition of its power as a lever for change is slowly getting there. And we need to be there then to steer that ship, to make sure that it's going in the, a systems approach that addresses, our food system holistically. And the answer isn't quick single issue techno fixes that actually in the long term will only, perpetuate the issues that we're seeing.
Actually, I'll tell you a little story. IFOAM got agriculture up into the climate change talks. The G99 in China stopped it all the time. Anyway, I was in the COP, which is I was IFOAM president in Warsaw, and every day I was sort of meet up, sort of cross paths with this guy from Fiji. And we got talking, and we just talked all the time, and and then one day, he said, "How's it going?" I said, "Oh, not good. I'm really upset about what's happening." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh, the G99 China killed putting agriculture into the document." He said, "What do you mean?" And so I started explaining our role, and because by the way, that's the other thing people don't know, we started along with other groups, started the Farmers Forum within the UN FCCC. And I was just saying how, as farmers, we were really disappointed. He says, "Look," he said, "I didn't know this." He says, "By the way, I'm the chair of the G77 in China. I'll take you guys to have a meeting with our agricultural committee." So we organised it. And from there, they agreed. And why it's called Coronivia, you would know, but most people wouldn't. That's one of the most important agricultural research stations in Fiji. So Fiji had a major role, IFOAM and Fiji together, in getting it up.
Absolutely. So, and the Coronivia joint work is what's bringing us all together, and Fiji is still really leading on that work as well, which is great.
Yeah. So anyway, I just said I'd mention that, but so I'm really pleased that you're continuing, because people probably don't realize how much we've actually done and influenced over the years within the UN system and other systems. And I still believe IFOAM is the best organisation to do that for the organic sector.
Absolutely. And I think the IFOAM role on the civil society mechanism for the Committee on Food Security is also really critical. I think, an area where we've got opportunities to explore is around the Biodiversity COP and that convention, because it covers off so many areas that organic addresses, from maintaining biodiversity in the field to the pesticide management. So, we've got to continue to engage with, all of our stakeholders and all the like-minded organizations, so we can get those messages through every possible way that we can. Continue that legacy that you contributed so much to, Andre.
The Committee for Food Security, we've got a really good presence in. And I'll just let another little story like this is that their committee of experts put out this whitewash on agroecology. I said, this is wrong, and so I contacted Miguel Altieri and others, and I said, look at this, we've got to, our organisations have got to write in and put a complaint about this. So we did, and we got a meeting with them and won the case. And that's how we actually got agroecology, or one of the ways we got agroecology in the UN. It started. And of course, the next one is that I was in Graziano's office when he was the head, Nadia Shialava. We're the ones who proposed the agroecology conferences. And so it's our initiative that we now have agroecology up there. But where we've had you're right, where we've had the most limited presence are the biodiversity COPs. And, I did go to a few and talk, but it's just very minor. But I really think you're right. We really need to be there, and IFOAM needs to be there, get a presence, and, over time you have impact.
Yeah, that's right. You just got to get your foot in the door, and then be in the room, and then you start to get the networks and make those connections. And I think also there's, increasing recognition that there has to be a link between all of these UN processes as well. So we can leverage the relationships we've already got to make progress in some of those other areas. So we need boots on the ground and hands. And I think, one of the things I'm always keen to know is, who of our membership and who from the, the broader movement are going to these events. And then we can utilize people who are already there. It's not necessarily about, the president being there or someone from the office being there, but it's one movement together, and we can all do our part if we're attending those meetings in another capacity or from our national organization. So that communication about where you are and what you're doing in the movement, I think, is also really valuable and an area we can strengthen under the new strategy.
Yeah. And so the other really important word you said, communication. There's no point what you do. All the things you're doing is the world's best kept secret. Yeah. And I'm just interested how you plan to go forward to make sure you can communicate all these positive messages and all the positive things that IFOAM is doing.
Yeah, that's a big question. I think that's an area where we need a little bit of innovation. And again, we need to be working with our regional bodies and our sector platforms and all the different components of the movement to escalate and amplify the messages that are coming out. Something we've also been thinking about is, we need to get more strategic in our comms, different messages in different ways for different audiences. Everyone always, has a laugh about TikTok, but for some people, TikTok is the way to get a message across. I'm not about to start a TikTok channel, but, we've really got to innovate in those spaces. Social media is clearly hugely powerful, but we also need new people to communicate our messages as well. So I think we've got some thinking to do about, who the champions, who the influencers are in this space that will get our message away from talking to ourselves and getting out to that broader audience that needs to hear it. So it's a space of innovation and learning for us, and would be really keen to, hear from anybody out there who has got ideas about how we can be really innovative and use communications in new ways to get to new audiences.
Well, you're exactly right. And using all the social media. So we use TikTok. I mightn't be into TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and because each one of those has its own unique audience. And so you need to be there, and you need to think about how you message to each of these audiences. The other thing that we found was really important is to get younger people who know this. We're part of a generation that, yes, we look at it and everything, but what we found when we got social media savvy people, it's water off a duck's back for them. They put these things together so quickly and they get impact. And, they just know it intuitively. And these are the people you need to get. You'd be surprised the difference they make and the reach you'll get.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing we recognize as well is we've been very Anglophone in IFOAM, so everything is in English. So we are going to be working on how we can get our website in multiple languages and do more of our communications in some of the world's other sort of global languages as well. It's about equity and inclusion, and people need to be able to hear and learn and read in their own language as well.
Yeah. That's really important, and it's so much easier to do now. It's not that hard. In our case, we make sure everything's in Spanish because we've a large Latin American presence.
Yeah.
Last week I was in Central Asia and with the organic movement there, and because they're all, say, ex-Soviet Union countries, their second language is Russian. It's the common language, and very few of them speak English.
Yeah.
So I think that, and then you think about the percentage of the world that speaks Mandarin, and look, I agree with you. We really, and all our organisations have got to communicate with people in their language, not assume they know English.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really critical.
And as you're saying, that's fairness, equity.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Anyway, Karen, I just want to say, I think, you and the current World Board are doing a marvelous job. I know how much you've had to do to get this, and I know you're all up for election soon, a couple of months. But I really hope that the majority of you get elected so you can consolidate these changes. I think this is very important, and I personally see IFOAM now, it's got a really good, bright future. So thank you, Karen. I really appreciate what you've done.
Thank you, Andre. It's been a wild ride the last few years, starting our term during COVID in particular. But yeah, I think we do have a really bright future as an organization. And I think I'm reminded every day just how important it is. So yeah, we'll keep soldiering on and making sure that we get where we need to be.
And you can be assured that Regeneration International will support what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Okay, ciao.
Hello, and welcome to the People's Food Summit 2024. I'm Dr. André Leu. I'm the International Director of Regeneration International, and we have a wonderful guest today, a friend of mine for many, many years, Dr. Kien Nyugen. And he's an adjunct associate professor at Griffith University. He has been actively building links between Vietnam and Australia in organic food production, certification, and trade. And today he will talk about this project. I've been pleased to actually be involved in this project. It's gone through several iterations, and I know from experience that I think this is a wonderful model how countries in our region in the Asia Pacific can work together for our mutual benefits. So, Kien, welcome so much. And if you would like to just firstly explain where you came from in Vietnam and how you ended up in Australia.
Good morning, Dr. André Leu. Thank you so much for your invitation me to be part of the People Summit 2024. It's my honor to be here and to share my story. My name is Kien Nyugen. I grew up in a rice farmer families in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. At that time, I went to school by boat. Every day, I and my friends row a boat, about 3 kilometers from home to school. You can say that from year 1 to year 12, only few students could continue to go to university. Most students drop out of school early and they work on the farm. Fortunately, I could continue to enter to university. And I did my Bachelor of Agriculture at Cần Thơ University, one of the very good agriculture university in the south of Vietnam. And I became a lecturer in An Giang University in year 2000 after I graduated from Cần Thơ University. And fortunately, I got a scholarship, Australian Development Scholarship, to study at the Australian National University for my master degree in environmental management and development. And then I came back Vietnam, An Giang University to work to contribute to agriculture teachings and research at An Giang University. And another chance, I am lucky I got a PhD scholarship under Australian Leadership Award in year 2008. I came back Australia National University to do my PhD in social science. That's in that space I study about how humans and nature, agriculture, ecological and social relationships in building resilient flood of the Mekong Delta. And that's from that I developed my skills and my research and my inspiration to come back Vietnam to lead a research center for rural development at An Giang University for years. At that time, I started to recover traditional floating rice in agroecological ways of thinking and support the Mekong provinces and people to restore traditional way of farming, ecological ways of farming. And then from that, I came back Australian National University for my postdoc. At that time, I got an award from NASA. You know, NASA is a National Association of Sustainable Agriculture Australia. They give me an award for young organic practitioner. Thus, I attend the first conference, international conference of IFOAM in India in 2017. At that time, I met over 2,000 farmers in India and practitioners and professors and experts in business. That inspired me to go deeply with organic agriculture. From that, I developed Mekong Organic, a social enterprise based in Canberra to promote and develop the relationships between Australia and Vietnam for organic agriculture. That's I fortunate to meet André and Alan Broughton and many others leaders in organic agriculture to be part of our program. And that the story, that's who am I and where am I now? I stay in Canberra in my office of Mekong Organic, and we run several projects funded by Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and social enterprise and NGO based in Canberra. You can say about my profiles, and I established Mekong Organic formally in 2019. It's about 5 years, nearly 5 years. Yeah. I will introduce you about the work of Mekong Organic. We focus on supporting small farmers, smallholder farmers in the Mekong countries. And we pilot working in Vietnam, and we built a relationship between Australia and Vietnam. And then we expect to extend to Mekong countries. Just recently, we built connection with Royal Agriculture University in Cambodia. We have started to deliver one training course in Cambodia last week. Our team are researchers and practitioners based from Australia and Vietnam. Most of them graduated from Australia in different backgrounds, different fields, agriculture, social science, economics, and ecology or water. And Mekong Organic, we approach a locally led, approach to promote ecological organic agriculture in the Mekong region. Even we are the international body located in Canberra, but our approach is very locally led. We partners with local organizations, local university, or local government to co-design the program or the project. Any project we have developed, we start with the need of the local community. Usually they send out the request to ask for training or to ask for to building the new projects based on their need. The community want to change. That's we come up with the idea from them, and then we design the program together, working together to build a program for their community. We have a network of many local universities across Vietnam, regional university or national university. We also have developed a network with university in Laos or Cambodia. And especially we work closely with organic association like Vietnam VOA Organic Agriculture Association or NASA in Australia or many other organic agriculture and food company in Vietnam and in Mekong countries, or even in Australia. We partner with over 20 business like Export Council Australia or Arrow Foods or OP Organic. Yeah, they are supporting and always go with us to partner with us to build connection with Vietnam. International is one of our strategic partnership. Dr. Professor André, he's always supportive for Mekong Organic from the early stage of the development of the program, and he involved with us during COVID. COVID-19. André happy to share the regenerative agriculture to our participants. Over 600 participants in Vietnam attend the training course. One of our key outcomes of the Mekong Organic projects last month on the 15th of September, we were invited by the Minister of Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development to share our locally led approach to support ecological and organic agriculture in Vietnam, particularly in the Mekong Delta. And he invited me to share the work, then approach to directors of different departments of MARC and newspaper like Vietnam Agriculture newspaper and many others key leaders. They are here and they appreciate our work and they suggest to scale up Mekong Organic locally led approach into national wide national approach. That's that we feel very happy to hear. They appreciate and they adopt, they welcome the work of Mekong Organic in Vietnam at the minister level. That is our one of key outcome. You can see the photo on the right side that we host the locally led approach to develop ecological rice in Cham Chim National Park just in September this year. In early this year, on 13th of January, Professor André already visited and attended and presented in Cham Chim National Park about regenerative agriculture. At this event, he shared the regenerative agriculture approach to over 100 participants in Đồng Tháp province. They are leaders of provincial government, Department of Agriculture, and districts, commune, and farmer. And on the 10th of September this month, we came back and to deliver the very more detailed training for the key member of the districts and the key farmer leaders in community to move to the second stage of the project. And after training, they are happy to move and to choose ecological rice-based system for that community. And here, the training in Cambodia, also on the 21st to 24th of September, led by Mr. Alan Broughton. He's the president of Organic Agriculture Association in Spain, Australia. He is the principal educator for Mekong Organics, and he is the first one been to Cambodia to host a 3-day training course at Royal University of Agriculture. That's the most important success event that we attract more than 60 students from the university. We also host training in Đà Lạt, in Lâm Đồng province. The Lâm Đồng Department of Agriculture and Rural Development requests Mekong Organic to train for organic veggie farming for businesses and for staff of the DAC in Lâm Đồng province on 16 to 17 of September this month. Also, Alan Broughton, he's the one he delivered this training in Đà Lạt in Lâm Đồng province of Vietnam. More importantly, you can see the Mekong Organic received two grants from Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. We under the Australia-Vietnam Enhanced Economic Engagement grant, that's round 1 and round 2. We publish a book, 500 copies of the book, over 500 pages. The book is the collection of over 60 chapters, 60 practice of the trainers and the professors and practitioners. They participate in the training during COVID, and all the training is translated and into books, and we donate a book to almost university in Vietnam, Agriculture University Library, and we also donate book to Department of Agriculture and Rural in Vietnam in 63 provinces. Most of them receive the book, and also we donate to organic business. They run the business or cooperative or farmer, and participant, they attend the training course, they receive the book. This is the first book that's in Vietnam. We have that book, very comprehensive book from farming practice, technical farming practice to processing or certification, processing and branding and marketing and selling. That the whole supply chains of the organic agriculture, farming and trade. We use both Australian and Vietnamese knowledge to contribute to this book, the very successful story of the Australia-Vietnam partnership in this project. We in March this year we host a study tour for 19 business, university, and Organic Agriculture Association member. They participate. Also, they are farmers. They participate 10 days from Sydney to Canberra to Riverina, Bairnsdale, Victoria, and Melbourne. We host the meeting with the business in Sydney, supported by Export Council Australia, and we met business organic farmers like OB, like Junie Organic Chocolates in Junie, and Randall Organic Rice. You know, Peter Randall, he just passed away a few days ago. And he's one of our best friends, and he always support Mekong Organics since the early stage of the project, and he welcomed many visits from Mekong Organics to his farm, and you know that's the very successful journey tour, study tour for our business. During and after trip, they already tried. They developed trade, exports and imports between Australian business and Vietnamese business already happened. Back to early this year, you can say Professor André and some other Australian business like Alan Broughton and Peter Randall attend our first training workshop in ecological and regenerative agriculture in Đồng Tháp, and I see Regeneration International post 2 articles about the Mekong Organic print Regeneration International to Vietnam. That's very good news for us. We hope Regeneration International will be there more, and we will work together more in Vietnam, because Vietnam is very keen to have the support from international partner. We work closely with local cooperative in Cà Mau and local business in Cà Mau province of Vietnam, the bottom of Vietnam, where they developed organic rice and shrimp farming and organic shrimp in the mango forest. But in the area, you can see in the backgrounds of this photo, you can see we stand in front of the shrimp farm, shrimp pond. In the wet season, a farmer cultivates rice using fresh water from the rain-fed water, but they harvest in December. Usually they harvest rice in December, and they rotate shrimp in the same farm using salt water. 6 months of fresh water, they grow rice, but the next six months of salt water, they grow shrimp. That's a very innovative farming approach that Mekong farmers in the coastal area, coastal provinces adapt to the seasonal water changes, water condition, and they practice organically. And now over 500 hectares of shrimp of the rice farm was certified by international standard like USDA, EU, or JAS. That is very potential to scale up in the more area in Mekong Delta. Now we already scale up to Kiên Giang province and Bến Tre and Trà Vinh and Sóc Trăng in the coastal provinces of Mekong Delta now develop organic rice on the shrimp farm. We also train for local resource staff of An Giang Department of Agriculture and Rural Development in last year in May for organic veggie and rice farming. And so we provide training to Bạc Liêu University students and staff and government officials in Bạc Liêu province in the Mekong Delta. And other projects in different COVID, we got fund from Rotary Club of Hull, and we travel around Victoria, New South Wales, and Victoria to meet Australian organic farmers, and we host Zoom for Vietnamese farmer to attend to hear to learn the lesson and experience from Australian organic farmers. The program, history program, we got about $12,000 from Rotary Club of Hull. They support 6 farmers to visit Australia, 6 Vietnamese farmers to visit Australia. However, we already booked tickets. We got visa for farmer. We booked the tickets for them to arrive on the 14th of March in December. But at that time, we must cancel the trip because of COVID lockdown. We could not host the trip for 6 farmers. But we discussed with the donor that we change the approach. Alan Proton and I travel rural care to meet farmers in Lytton, in Pest, in rural New South Wales, or in Lismore, in the whole New South Wales to meet them and share by Zoom. The Australian farmers share about organic veggie farming, chicken or rice, or horticulture, dairy, and to share with our Vietnamese farmer. And over 100 farmers from Vietnam attend the Zoom. Actually, we wish to have 6 farmers to visit Australia, but finally we offer over 100 farmers from Vietnam. They can watch the Zoom. They can join the Zoom and listen to and hear the farmers from Australia share their experience. That's a very successful story from that. DFAT, this is the seed fund for DFAT to say to value the work of the Mekong Organics, and they decided to fund for 2 projects to Mekong Organics so far. In early stage of Mekong Organic development in 2019, we received a small grant from Australian Embassy in Hanoi under Oxford Skills, or they call Australian Alumni Grant Fund, and they give a small seed fund to Mekong Organic team. We host the first Mekong Delta, Australia and Vietnam partnerships in organic agriculture. On the photo, see on the 14th of January 2019 at An Giang University. At that time, we are the pioneer to host the very first organic agriculture partnership event between Australia and Vietnam. At that time, you can see Mark Anderson. He was the general director of NASA. He attends, you can see NASA engage and participate, and Alan Proton participates in event since 2019 with Mekong Organic in Vietnam. And so far, NASA also certified 1 business in Bình Phước province for organic vegetable in Bình Phước province. NASA Organic NCO certified NASA Organic already happened in Vietnam through our connection, our support for Mekong Organic Initiative. And we also visit a NASA office in Adelaide, South Australia. And we support Khmer, very small farmers. They have only 1,000 square meter of the veggie farmings in Khmer, in Tri Tôn district of An Giang province. And we support to revive the Khmer palm, to support Khmer-led female entrepreneurs.